He opened his eyes and saw a ceiling made of rotten wood. His fingers were thin and felt like someone else's. His hands were shaking. His head was ringing, as if he'd been hit. A second ago there had been a truck, headlights, the crunch of metal, and now the ceiling, the smell of mold, and a body that wouldn't obey him. Cassian Vale. The name just popped into his head. Not his name, not his life. But memories flooded back, and he understood everything in a matter of seconds. The youngest son of an impoverished baron, 22 years old, a gift everyone considered useless, the ability to see a certain thread within people, a parlor trick, a disgrace to the family. At court, they called him Paper Vale and laughed in his face. At 16, he refused to swear allegiance to the crown prince because he spoke aloud what must not be said, that this man had no thread at all. After that, he was exiled for 6 years in a row, each time farther away, each time to a place worse than the last. And now, the finale. T. Yornhold. 4 villages, 0 soldiers, 0 gold, and 7 wives who had been cast out by their own kingdoms. He sat down on the bed and looked at his palms. Narrow, pale. The hands of a man who had wielded a pen, not a sword, his whole life. The voice of Daniel Pack from Seattle echoed in his head, the man he had been just a minute ago. The man who, for 15 years, had unlocked the potential of people everyone else considered useless. The man who had died on a wet road while returning from a night shift. Well, hello there, intern. Looks like nobody wants you again. Never mind. I know what to do about this. He stood up, his legs buckled. He grabbed the wall and steadied himself. Rain was falling outside the window, gray and heavy, like a curtain before a play that nobody wanted to watch. Down in the courtyard, someone blew a horn. Then a second time. Then a voice, loud and official. Baron Vale, to the gate. Your wives have arrived. Cassian pulled on his doublet, which hung on him like a coat on a hanger. He went down the stairs. Each step creaked as if the house were trying to warn him. He stepped out into the courtyard. Rain lashed his face. 7 carriages stood by the gate. Not ceremonial ones, ordinary travel wagons without coats of arms, but a flag hung from each one. 7 different colors. 7 kingdoms. From the first carriage stepped a young woman with her eyes closed. From the second, a woman in black gloves reaching to her elbows. From the third, a tall figure with a pipe between his teeth and a gaze that made one want to step back. From the fourth, a young woman with a small board and a stylus who didn't utter a single sound. From the fifth, someone in a hood who smiled as if they knew a joke that hadn't been told yet. From the sixth, a woman with dark circles under her eyes and a stack of papers pressed to her chest. The youngest stepped out of the last one. She was the only one who looked directly at Cassian. And she smiled. Not a joyful smile, not a polite one. It was the kind of smile people give when they've decided things can't get any worse. The herald unrolled the scroll. He was short and round and smiled as if he were handing out gifts rather than sentences. Baron Cassian Vale, the province of Turnhold accuses you of disobeying the crown. 4 villages, 0 soldiers, 0 gold in the treasury, and 7 wives rejected by their home kingdoms. Live long and happily. The crowd behind the herald laughed. A dozen or so escort soldiers, grooms, servants sent to escort the princesses and then return immediately. Everyone understood what was happening. A slow execution disguised as a wedding. The herald rolled up the scroll and added, "A tax of 3,000 gold pieces must be paid to the crown within 37 days. In the event of non-payment, the province will return to direct rule. All the wives will be given to more worthy lords. Applications have already been submitted. There are between 4 and 11 suitors in line for each princess." He said this aloud, in front of everyone. Cassian looked at the 7 women standing in the rain. Their cloaks, in the colors of their former kingdoms, were wet and heavy. so that everyone could see exactly where each one had been cast out from. The expressions on all of them were identical, the expression of someone who had already been buried alive. And at that moment, a voice rang out in Cassian's head. Cold, female, emotionless. Hidden potential system activated. 7 SSS rank carriers detected. Recommendation: do not let them die before dawn. Cassian blinked. Above the head of each of the 7 women he saw threads, translucent, glowing. And next to each thread hung numbers. Everine Alistair, apparent rank F, hidden rank SSS, blocked, childhood trauma, external interference. Celeste Mirage, apparent rank F, hidden rank SSS, locked, maternal betrayal. Neri Han, apparent rank F, hidden rank SSS, locked, guilt, fear of touch, and so on. 7 women, 7 threads, 7 locks. A reflex kicked in for Daniel Pack from Seattle. 15 years on the job. 47 people saved from being fired. 3 of them went on to become vice presidents. The same pattern every single time. They'd gather the problem employees in one room and decide the problem lay with them. Classic. Back in Seattle, this happened every other Monday. He stepped forward. He took off his raincoat, soaked through, yet still stately, and draped it over the shoulders of the girl closest to him, the one standing with her eyes closed. Everine Alistair, the blind princess. She flinched at his touch. She recoiled. Then she froze. The fabric settled on her shoulders, warm, heavy. The herald opened his mouth, then closed it. The soldiers exchanged glances. A clink rang out. Everine Alistair, favor 0, +5. Cassian turned to the herald. The man was still smiling, but not as confidently. Tell the king that the tax will be paid. On time. The herald nodded, then he turned away. Then he stopped and called over his shoulder. They're taking bets at court, Baron. The odds on your death are 40-1. Cassian watched him walk away. Tell the court that I don't gamble. I invest in the long-term development of my staff. The herald didn't understand. That was to be expected. No one understood. The carriages drove off. The escort soldiers rode away. 8 people remained in the courtyard in the rain. 1 man without a cloak, and 7 women in wet cloaks from foreign kingdoms. Cassian scanned them with his gaze. Rule number 1. Show the team that you'll get soaked before they do. Done. Rule number 2. Learn their names. He opened his mouth to introduce himself. And at that moment, the youngest of the 7, the one who had smiled at him first, stepped forward and said, My name is Lillian, and you're Cassie. Can I call you Cassie? The other 6 looked at her as if she'd just jumped off a cliff. Cassian looked at the 17-year-old girl, who was the only one of them all who wasn't afraid. Or perhaps she was so afraid that she'd decided not to show it. Sure, he turned to the others. Inside, it's damp and cold here. Inside, it's damp and cold here too, but at least there's a roof. I don't know what they've told you about me or what they've told you about yourselves, but here's what I know for sure. No one will be thrown out of this house. Not tomorrow. Not in 37 days. Not in a year. No one moved. Rain pelted the stones of the courtyard. Then the woman in black gloves, the one who had been the second to step out of the carriage, moved toward the doors. She walked past Cassian, and he heard her quietly mutter through clenched teeth. Fine words, Baron. We'll see what they're worth. Neri Han, favor 5. No change. The others followed her, one after another. Celeste Mirage walked by in silence and gave him a look that was enough to make him freeze. Mei Lin So nodded and held up a small board on which a single word was written. We'll see. Aurora Kincaid, wearing a hood, lingered nearby and whispered, You're interesting. But you'll die in 12 days, or maybe not. I haven't figured it out yet. Tai Yan Yun, clutching papers to her chest, called out as she walked past. 11 gold pieces in the treasury. I've already counted them. We're bankrupt. Ivrain Allister, her cloak draped over her shoulders, was the last to stop. She couldn't see his face, but she turned her head right in his direction and said, "There are 23 rats in the courtyard, 41 under the gate, and 8 people in the woods beyond the wall. They're breathing quietly, but I can hear them." Cassian froze. The system displayed a line. Ivrain Allister, hidden gift, perfect hearing, radius, 2 kilometers, current unlock, 1%. She heard everything, everything around her. And no one in her entire life had ever guessed that the blind girl who ate perfectly with a spoon and never bumped into furniture wasn't helpless. She was something completely different. 8 people in the forest. Cassian looked toward the trees beyond the wall. Rain was pouring down on everything. Nothing was visible. But Ivrain wasn't wrong. He knew it. The system knew it. The first night in Turnhold hadn't even begun, and someone was already waiting outside the walls. Lillian tugged at his arm. "Cassie, let's go. There's a fireplace inside. It doesn't work, but I'll fix it. I know how." Cassian looked at her. A thread hung above her head, dim, almost invisible. Lillian rose. Obvious gift? None. Hidden gift? Amplifier. SSS. Unlock. 0%. The rarest gift on the continent, belonging to a girl whose own father had sent her off with the words, "I'm sorry you were born." Cassian breathed in the damp air of Turnhold and went inside. 37 days, 3,000 gold pieces, 7 women whom the whole world had written off. And him. Paper Veil. A personnel development manager with 15 years of experience from another world. The third rule will come tomorrow, because today it feels like he's already been married 7 times in a row. Inside, the castle turned out to be worse than it looked from the outside. The fireplace in the main hall didn't work. The roof was leaking in 4 places. There was just enough furniture to tell that people had once lived here. 1 long table, 9 chairs, 2 of which were missing legs. A bookcase with 3 books and a dead mouse. Cassian looked it all over and thought to himself, "I've seen offices after restructuring that looked better than this." Lillian was already busy by the fireplace. She found some kindling under the stairs and dry moss in a crack in the wall, and 10 minutes later a fire was burning in the fireplace. Small, pitiful, but alive. The other 6 scattered around the hall. Each chose a corner as far away from the others as possible. That was the first thing Cassian noticed as a manager. They weren't a team. They were 7 strangers who'd been thrown into the same pit. Celeste stood by the window with a pipe between her teeth, watching the rain. Nay Ri sat against the wall with her back to the stone and rested her gloved hand on the hilt of her sword. Mei Lin had settled into a corner with a small board and was writing something. Aurora sat right on the floor in the center of the hall, twirling a button between her fingers. Taiyan spread out some papers on the table and was counting something, her lips moving silently. Ivrain stood by the door. She didn't move. She was listening. Cassian stood in the center. 7 pairs of eyes turned toward him. 6 pairs. Ivrain was staring into space, but her head was tilted toward him. "We need to talk about the next 37 days. Celeste exhaled a puff of smoke and didn't turn around. Taiyan looked up from her papers. 11 gold barons. I already said that. We're not just broke. We're broke and owe 3,000. Cassian nodded. I heard that. Now I want to hear something else. Which of you can do what? A pause. A long one. A heavy one. Neri was the first to break the silence. She raised her hand, clad in a black glove. I can break things. Her voice was even and dry. No self-pity, just a fact. Cassian looked at her thread. Neri Han. Hidden gift. Control over the density of matter. Unlock. 0%. She didn't know how to break things. She knew how to alter the very structure of matter. But she didn't know that. And telling her that now would be pointless. The system couldn't be forced. Cassian remembered the rule. If he tried to unlock a person by force, deception, or pressure, the system would lock for 30 days. All gratitude meters would drop to -10. He had to make them want to open up on their own. Like in Seattle. Like with each of the 47 people he'd saved from dismissal in his past life. Don't pressure them. Don't rush them. Just be there and observe. All right, you know how to break things. That's useful. Nairi blinked. She had clearly been expecting a different reaction: disgust, fear, and order to stay away. Cassian turned to Taeyeon. "And what do you think?" Taeyeon frowned. "I think, and I see, that we're doomed. You see the numbers. That's already more than 9 out of 10 barons on this continent can see." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Then she fell silent and went back to her papers, but Cassian noticed that the tips of her ears had turned pink. Taeyeon Yoon, favorability 3, +2, 5. He turned to Mei Lin. She held up a small tablet. It read, "I'm not saying it, I know. I'm curious about something else. How are you going to protect us?" Cassian read it and nodded. "Fair question. Answer. Not yet. I have no soldiers, no magic, no money. But I have something that, on this continent, it seems no one uses." Everyone was waiting. "I can see things in people that they themselves don't see. And no, I don't mean compliments. I mean that in 20 minutes of conversation, I learned from the tax inspector the name of the man who bribed him." Silence. Celeste turned away from the window, for the first time that evening. "You're talking about Merc." Cassian nodded. "Count Hortense Duval sent him. He wants us to avoid paying the tax, because when the province returns to the crown, 2 of you will be handed over to him." The atmosphere in the room shifted. Cassian didn't know exactly who Duval wanted, but he knew how pressure worked. Drop a bombshell and see who flinches. Nairi gripped the hilt of her sword. Celeste took a long drag on her pipe. Neither of them flinched. They were all prepared for this. They all knew that their bodies had been bargaining chips long before Turnhold. Cassian felt that very feeling he knew from his past life rising inside him. Cold, professional anger. Not rage, not a scream. Calculation. When he saw management trying for the 3rd time that year to fire a single mother from the accounting department because she left half an hour early to pick up her child from school. He didn't scream. He prepared a report on how much money this woman had saved the company over 3 years, and he placed it on the CEO's desk 5 minutes before the dismissal meeting. It was the same here, only the stakes were higher. We need 3 things: money, protection, and time. You'll handle the money. He nodded at Taeyeon. You'll handle protection. He nodded at Nairi. And I'll buy the time myself. Celeste exhaled a puff of smoke. And what about the Baron? Through negotiations. She smirked. Cassian didn't bother to explain. He turned to Ivrin, who had been standing by the door the whole time. Those 8 people in the forest, they're still there. Ivrin tilted her head slightly. 7. 1 left. The rest have settled in for the night. 2 have metal on their belts, swords or knives. 1 is breathing through his mouth. He's sick or wounded. The room fell silent. Celeste slowly took the pipe out of her mouth. Taeyeon stopped counting. Even Aurora looked up from her button. Everyone was staring at Ivrain. The blind one. The helpless one. The one they'd brought here because she was a burden. Cassian approached her. You can hear everything within a 2-kilometer radius. Ivrain turned pale. She didn't know how he'd figured that out. She didn't even know what it meant herself. But Cassian knew. He had seen her thread, and he knew this wasn't the time to press her. I'm not asking you to explain anything. I'm asking you to try something. If you don't want to, just say no. He set 3 cups in front of her. He'd found them in the kitchen while the others were taking their seats. 1 with water, 1 with wine from the only bottle in the cellar, 1 with vinegar that had been sitting on the shelf next to a dead mouse. Tell me which one is where. Ivrain stood motionless, her hands clenched. She wanted to refuse. Cassian could see it. He saw her resolve waver. a mental block. She was used to being blind, used to being helpless. That's what they'd instilled in her. He didn't press her. He sat down on the floor beside her, soaked, frozen, and hungry, and spoke softly. In my old house there was a woman who could hear the kettle boiling 2 rooms away. Everyone thought she was deaf because she never answered when they shouted at her. But she just didn't like it when people shouted at her. Evelyn was silent for a long time. The hall was silent along with her. Then she raised her hand and pointed. Water, wine, vinegar. Not a single mistake. And then she added, "There are 4 people standing behind the door. 2 are breathing normally. 1 is breathing rapidly. He's nervous. The 4th is holding his breath. He's eavesdropping." Cassian looked at the door. He opened it. Behind it stood 3 servants and an old man. The old man recoiled. The servants froze. The system flashed. Evelyn Allister. Favor 5. +7. 12. Echo map skill unlocked. 3%. Cassian closed the door. He turned to the other 6. They were looking at Evelyn differently. Not with pity, not with indifference. With something akin to recognition. As if each of them had thought the same thought. If she wasn't what they took her to be, then maybe I'm not either. Cassian didn't say this out loud. He didn't need to. A good manager doesn't voice an insight. He creates the conditions for people to come to it on their own. Lillian was sitting by the fireplace. The fire had flared up, inexplicably stronger. Cassian looked at her thread. An amplifier. Near her, the gifts of others worked 15 to 40% more powerfully, even the unlocked ones. Evelyn had just named the 4 people behind the door, 2 meters away, with breathtaking precision. With just 1% unlocking and amplification from Lillian, if both of them were fully unlocked. Cassian didn't dwell on it any further. 37 days, 11 gold pieces, 8 observers in the forest, a debt of 3,000 gold pieces, 7 princesses whom the world considered trash. Night 1. Welcome to Turnhold. He sat down at the table. Lillian brought him a bowl of porridge. He didn't know where she'd found the grain, but the porridge was hot, and it was the first warm thing that had happened to him in this world. He watched as Lillian handed out bowls to the others, how she went around to each one, how she smiled at each one, how she poured herself a bowl last, and the smallest portion of all. He stood up, took his bowl, set it in front of her. Eat. No one goes hungry in this house, starting with you. Lillian froze. She looked at him. Her eyes glistened. She sat down, dipped her spoon into the porridge, and began to cry. Quietly, silently, tears simply streamed down her cheeks and fell into the bowl. No one said a word. But something in that room had changed, something small and important. Lillian rose. Favor 15. +5. 20. Cassian sat down next to her and began to eat his porridge. Cold. Because he had given away the hot one. Rule number 3. The team eats first. Always. That night, Cassian didn't sleep. He sat by the window on the 2nd floor and stared into the darkness. The rain had stopped. The forest beyond the wall stood black and wet. 8 people. Now 7. Evelyn said 1 had gone south. The rest were waiting. Cassian didn't know exactly what for, but he knew who had sent them. Duval. Count Hortense Duval. The neighboring tycoon whose lands bordered Turnhold. The one who bribed Merc. The one who wanted both princesses. The one who was waiting for the paper veil to die so he could come and rescue the poor widows. A classic scheme. Cassian had seen this in corporations. When a competitor doesn't attack openly but waits for you to go bankrupt so they can buy up your assets for a song. Only here, the assets were living beings. A knock on the door. A quiet one. Cassian turned around. The door opened slightly. Celeste. She stood in the doorway with a cold pipe in her hand. Her hair was wet. Her eyes were cold. But something resembling determination burned in them. She walked in without asking permission. She closed the door. She sat down in the only chair. Cassian waited. He knew this type. He'd seen it dozens of times. A person who comes not to ask for help, but to test whether you're worthy of it. You're no Baron. Cassian's expression didn't change. What did that tell you? Everything. You speak like a merchant, you move like a scholar, and you look at people like a doctor searching for a disease. She took a drag on her empty pipe out of habit and grimaced. I spent 3 years at the court of Mirage. I've seen hundreds of barons, counts, and dukes. Not a single one of them would have taken off his cloak for a blind girl in the rain. Cassian remained silent. Celeste leaned forward. I don't care who you are, but I do care what you're planning. If you're trying to use us, I want to know how. He could have lied. He could have told the truth. He chose a third option, the one that had worked with the most difficult people in his practice. The truth through a question. What did you want to build before they burned you? Celeste froze. The phone slipped from her fingers. She didn't pick it up. 4 minutes of silence. Cassian was counting. He always counted the pauses. In Seattle, he knew that if a person was silent for more than 2 minutes, it meant the question had hit the mark. Celeste stood up. She walked out. Cassian thought she'd left, but 3 minutes later she returned. In her hand was a rolled-up sheet of paper, old, worn at the folds. She'd kept it for 3 years, through 2 kingdoms, through exile and disgrace. She unfolded it on the table. It was a blueprint. Cassian leaned in. A smelter. A small, efficient smelter for processing ore. The blueprint was rough and incomplete, but the idea was brilliant. Even he could see that. The system flashed. Celeste Mirage. Favorability -5. +13. 8. Unlocked. Turnhold Smelter Project. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the blueprint. Her voice was quiet and brittle. I wanted to prove that magic isn't just a weapon, that you can build things with it. My fire could smelt ore cleaner and faster than any furnace. But my mother needed a soldier, not an engineer. Cassian nodded. In my world, people like you were called Zioners, and then they were dismissed because they made the higher-ups uncomfortable. Celeste looked at him, for the first time, without contempt, with surprise. Your world. Cassian realized he'd said too much, but he didn't back down. I'm not who I seem to be, Celeste, but I'm the one who can give you a smelter, not in a year, right now. If you show me what's needed and explain what's missing from this blueprint. She looked at him for a long time. Then she sat down. Then she began to speak. She spoke for an hour, about ore veins and melting points, about how fire magic interacts with carbon, about how, in the mountains beyond Turnhold, there's a mine dump that everyone thought was empty. But it wasn't empty. It had been misjudged. There was ore there, but not the kind they were looking for. Cassian listened. He didn't understand half of it, but he understood the main point. This woman was a genius who had been silenced for 3 years, and she had just started speaking. Toward the end, Celeste fell silent. She looked at her hands. But I have no fire, Baron. My gift has burned out. I can't even light a candle. Cassian looked at her thread. Celeste Mirage. Hidden gift. Magic transfer. She can distribute magical energy to others through touch. Her fire hadn't burned out. It had changed. She was no longer a torch. She had become a lighter for other people's torches. The most valuable type of person on any team. But telling her that now would disrupt the process. She wasn't ready. The favor scale was at 8. To reveal the hidden card, 50 was needed. Cassian chose the words that had worked in Seattle with people who thought they were worthless. I don't need your fire. I need your brain. Build me a smelter. I'll find someone to stoke it. Celeste clenched her teeth. She stood up. She took the blueprint. She walked to the door. She stopped. Without turning around, she called over her shoulder. Celeste. Just Celeste. Don't call me by my title. Cassian nodded, though she couldn't see him. In the morning, he went downstairs and found that Lillian had already made breakfast. Porridge. porridge again. But this time, there were 9 bowls on the table. 8 for people. 1 for the cat that had appeared out of nowhere and was sitting on the windowsill. All 7 of them were at the table, together for the first time. At the same table for the first time, without being ordered to. Lillian was serving the food. Neri was eating with her hands and didn't hold back. Taeyeon was drinking tea she'd brewed herself from some herbs she'd found in the garden. Maylin was writing on a little board. Aurora was talking to the cat. Celeste sat at the corner of the table and chewed in silence. Yvrain sat next to Cassian, very close, and he realized that she had sat there precisely because it was quieter next to him. He wasn't making any noise. He wasn't clattering his spoon. He wasn't creaking his chair. She felt safe next to him, not because he was strong, but because he was quiet. It was the first morning. Cassian looked at them and thought, 7 people, 7 broken careers, 7 unique skills that no one had bothered to appreciate, and 37 days to assemble a team capable of earning 3,000 gold pieces in a province where there's nothing but mud. A knock at the gate, loud, demanding. Everyone froze. Yvrain looked up. 3 of them. 1 in heavy boots, 2 in chainmail. The one in boots has a leather bag. Inside is paper. Lots of paper. Cassian stood up. Merc. Celeste had come by at night to check on Cassian, and in response to his question, she pulled out an old blueprint of the smelter that she'd been keeping for 3 years. Cassian tasked her with building the smelter and raised her favor rating to 8. In the morning, all 7 sat down at the same table for the first time, and Tax Commissioner Merc knocked at the gate. Sir Roland Merc turned out to be exactly as Cassian had described him. Short, round, with small eyes that darted around as if looking for something to steal. Behind him stood 2 soldiers, not his soldiers, Count Duval's soldiers. Cassian recognized the crests on their breastplates, a lion and an axe. Merc entered without waiting to be invited. He surveyed the hall. He saw 7 women at the table. His eyes lingered on Neri, then on Celeste. Then he turned to Cassian and smiled. Baron Vale, I am Roland Merc, Royal Commissioner, sent to oversee the handover of the province. Cassian nodded. Please have a seat, Commissioner. Porridge. Merc blinked. He hadn't expected hospitality. He'd expected fear, confusion, pleas for mercy. Instead, he was offered porridge. Lillian was already setting the bowl down. Merc sat down, mechanically, and began to eat, also mechanically. Cassian sat down across from him. The system flashed. Roland Merc, apparent rank. No. Hidden rank. No. Ordinary person. But another piece of information hung next to the thread. Favor toward employer Duval, 62%. Motivation, fear, duty, 340 gold pieces. Family, a wife and 2 children in the capital. Cassian looked at these numbers and thought, a classic case. A bribed employee, bribed not with money, but with pressure on his family. Duval had him by the throat. Merc wasn't a villain, he was a hostage. The system had laid out a plan of action, 3 steps. First, show what you know about Duval. Second, don't make threats, offer a way out. Third, give him time. Cassian began. Tell me about the province, Commissioner. Merc hesitated. He wiped his mouth. He began to speak in an official tone. 4 villages, 312 people. Main occupations, gathering and small-scale farming. A mine dump to the north, abandoned. A forest to the east. The border of the Grey Tide is a 2-day journey away. The roads are destroyed. The bridge over the Kell River is broken. Cassian listened. Then he asked a question. Tell me, Commissioner, how much did Count Duval offer you to ensure we wouldn't pay the tax? Silence. Merc turned pale. The porridge stuck in his throat. The soldiers behind him stirred. Cassian didn't flinch. He sat in the same posture, calm, relaxed. That's how he used to sit during meetings in Seattle when he needed to show that the pressure was coming from him, not at him. Merc swallowed his porridge. I don't understand what you're talking about. Cassian tilted his head. Last night you arrived for an inspection 2 hours after the carriages arrived. The inspection is scheduled for the 3rd day. You came early. Because you needed to make sure we were here, and to report back. Merc didn't move. Cassian continued. Your soldiers bear the Duval coat of arms. You sent a report on the state of Turnhold to the Count before forwarding it to the Crown Chancellery. Did I guess correctly, or should I go on? Merc remained silent. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple. Cassian softened his tone, softer, quieter, the voice he used when speaking to people who were afraid. I don't need you as an enemy, Merc. I need a commissioner who does his job. I don't know what Duval promised you or how he's threatening you, but I do know this. In 36 days, I'll pay the tax, and then Turnhold will remain mine. And everyone who helped me will be remembered, and everyone who stood in my way will be remembered too. Merc stared at him. His eyes stopped darting around. Now they were fixed, like a rabbit facing a snake. Cassian stood up. Finish your porridge. It'll get cold. He walked out. Yvraine was waiting for him outside the door. She was standing by the wall, listening. His heart was racing. He was afraid. But not of you. Of something else. Of someone. I know. The system flashed. Plus 150 intelligence points. The interviewing skill has been unlocked. Cassian didn't smile. There was no reason to. Merc was a pawn. Duval stood behind him. And behind Duval stood someone else. There was always someone standing there. An hour later, Merc left. The soldiers rode off. But before that, Merc stopped at the gate. He turned around. He looked at Cassian and said one sentence. The bridge over the Kell. Fix it first. Without the bridge, you won't be able to leave the province when you're transporting the gold. Then he spurred his horse and rode off. Cassian stood at the gate and watched him go. It wasn't advice from an enemy. It was advice from a man who, for a second, had forgotten that he was an enemy. The system didn't flinch. Merc was an ordinary man without the gift. The system didn't work on him. But Daniel Pack from Seattle had been working without the system for 29 years. Remember Merc. He'll come in handy. Cassian returned to the hall. 6 of the 7 were there. Neyri wasn't there. He found her in the courtyard. She was standing in front of a stone wall, staring at her hands. The gloves were still on, black, thick, up to her elbows. She didn't turn around when he approached. He stopped 3 steps away. No closer. With people who have issues with touch, there's one rule. Don't invade their personal space without permission. Neyri spoke first. You know what I do with things when I take off my gloves? I read it in the documents. Read. Documents. He deliberately chose words that stripped the situation of emotion. I don't know from people. I read it in the papers. Fact, not gossip. Neyri turned around. Then you know it's dangerous to be near me. Cassian didn't back down. Standing next to me is a woman who eats with her hands and isn't shy about it, who sleeps with a sword, who was the first to say out loud that she knows how to break things while everyone else remains silent. That's not danger, Neyri. That's honesty. She blinked. No one had ever called that honesty. Everyone called it a curse, a blemish, a demonic taint. Cassian pulled a bundle from his belt. He'd been preparing it since the night before. He'd spent 2 hours sketching from the memory of Daniel Pack, who had worked one summer at a blacksmithing festival in Pennsylvania and had memorized the design of heat-resistant gloves. He unwrapped it. Inside lay the gloves, rough, made of thick leather stitched with wire. Cassian had made them from a piece of horse harness and some wire he'd found in the stable. They were ugly and uneven and smelled like a horse, but they were designed to withstand use. Try them on. Neyri looked at the gloves, then at Cassian, then at the gloves again. She took off her old ones. The hands beneath them were ordinary, Slender fingers, a few calluses, nothing demonic. Cassian noticed that she was hiding her hands from him. She was shy. She put on the new gloves. They fit snugly. Squeeze. She squeezed. Cassian saw the muscles in her forearms tense. The gloves held up. She squeezed harder. Even harder. Her eyes widened. The gloves didn't crack. Didn't turn black. Didn't crumble. She was holding something in her hands, and she wasn't destroying it. For the first time in 10 years. Nairi stood there staring at her hands. Cassian saw her thread flinch. Nairi Han, favor 5, plus 5, 10. Gift, density, unlocked 1%. 10. At the 10 mark, she'll take off her gloves in front of him for the first time. It had already happened, unconsciously. When she put on the new ones, she stood before him with bare hands and didn't flinch. Cassian said nothing. He turned and walked back to the castle. Nairi stood in the courtyard, clenching and unclenching her fists in her new gloves, over and over again. Like a child who had received a toy she'd been waiting for her whole life. On the third day, Cassian realized the scale of the problem. Tai-yun laid out the papers in front of him. She had been counting all night. Her eyes were red. Her hands were stained with ink. A cup of tea had gone cold and stood untouched beside her. Turnhold Province. 4 villages. 112 households. 312 residents. Of those, 190 were able-bodied. 122 were children and the elderly. Farmland. F4 fields. 2 of them are flooded. 1 is overgrown. 1 yields a harvest that feeds the village, but nothing more. A mine dump on the northern hill. Officially empty. Abandoned 12 years ago after royal intelligence deemed it unpromising. A bridge across the Kel River. Broken. Without it, it's impossible to transport anything to the main road. Roads. 3 out of 4 have been washed away. Cassian listened. Taeyeon finished listing the items and looked up. Total. 11 gold pieces in the treasury. Provincial revenue. 0. Expenditures. 3,000 gold pieces in 34 days. Baron. That's impossible. Cassian looked at her thread. Taeyeon Yun. The hidden gift. A vision of the system of power. She saw more than just numbers. She saw connections, debts, dependencies, who owes whom, who fears whom. But she didn't know that. She thought she just had good intuition for trade. A weak, feminine gift. That's what they told her at court. Cassian sat down beside her. You've counted everything that's there. Now count what isn't. Taeyeon frowned. What exactly? Debts, not ours. Others. 4 villages, 112 households. Someone among them owes someone else. Someone from the neighboring communities owes someone else. Village elders, merchants, artisans. Debt is currency, Taeyeon. If you know who owes whom, you know who will work. Taeyeon opened her mouth. She opened it. Something flashed in her eyes. Not confusion, recognition. As if he had said aloud what she had always known but never allowed herself to think. She stood up, gathered her papers, and left, without a word, without saying goodbye. Cassian recognized this gesture. A person had been given a task that truly interested them and had gone to work. Taeyeon Yun, favor 5, plus 5, 10, gift, golden score, reclassification initiated, A. In progress. He didn't have time to process it. Aurora ran into the room. She was barefoot. Her hood had slipped down to her shoulders. Her hair was tangled. Her eyes were wide open, but not wild. Different. Clear. She was looking straight at Cassian, and in her gaze was that very clarity that everyone at Kincaid Court had been waiting for years and had never seen. Sweetheart, there are people in the forest. They'll come tonight. 8. No, 7. No, wait. She squeezed her eyes shut, pressed her palms against her temples, rocked back and forth on her heels. Cassian didn't move. He waited. Aurora exhaled. She opened her eyes. 7. Tonight. Through the kitchen. They have ropes and sacks. They want to take one of us. Not to kill, to take. Which one? The one wearing gloves. Nayri. Cassian felt something tighten inside him. Not fear, calculation at full speed. Duval. He wasn't going to wait 37 days. He'd decided to take what he wanted right now, while there were no soldiers yet, while there was no defense yet, while Paper Veil was sitting in a dilapidated castle with 7 helpless women. Only they weren't helpless. He already knew that. The question was whether they knew it themselves. Cassian gathered everyone in the hall. 7 women, 7 faces, 7 different reactions. Taeyeon turned pale. Meilin clenched the small wooden tablet. Lillian pressed herself against the wall. Celeste lit her pipe and gave nothing away. Ivrian tilted her head and listened. Nayri stood up, her hand on her sword. I'll go out to them myself. No. Everyone looked at Cassian. No. You won't go out to them, because that's exactly what they're waiting for. They know you're cursed. They've prepared. Ropes and sacks. They won't touch you with their bare hands. They'll throw a sack over you, tie you up, and take you away. And you won't be able to do anything because they won't let you touch anything. Nayri clenched her teeth. She knew he was right. Then what? Cassian turned to Ivrian. You can track every one of them. Where they are, where they're going, when they'll stop. Ivrian nodded, slowly, hesitantly, but she nodded. Cassian turned to Celeste. You need to tell me everything you know about the mine tailings pile behind the northern hill, right now. Celeste frowned. What does the tailings pile have to do with anything? Tailings are rock. Rock is stone. Stone comes in different densities. He looked at Nayri. Nayri blinked. Then she understood. Her eyes widened. Cassian nodded. You won't break people. You'll break the earth. Beneath them. The next 8 hours were the longest of Cassian's life. In both lives. He divided up the work. Ivrain sat on the castle roof and listened. Every half hour she came down and reported. 7 are in position. 2 are sleeping. 5 are sharpening their blades. 1 went to the river for water. He returned. He told Celeste about the excavation. The rock was soft, shale and clay, and crumbled easily. But beneath the layer of clay lay a bed of basalt, hard and dense. Cassian devised a plan. Nayri would work with the earth, not with people. She would soften the shale on the path the mercenaries would take. When they stepped onto the loose section, their legs would sink knee-deep. And then Nayri would harden the shale again. She would wall them up knee-deep in stone. No blood, no death, no contact. Nayri listened to the plan in silence. Then she said, I've never done this before. I don't know if I can. Cassian looked at her. You know how it works. You've been doing this your whole life. Only the other way around. You've been crumbling stone. Now you need to compact it, not crumble it. Nayri clenched her fists in her new gloves. What if it doesn't work? Then we'll come up with another plan. But try it first. They reached the trail an hour before sunset. Nayri crouched down. She removed the glove from her right hand. She placed her on the ground. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. 30 seconds. The earth beneath her palm trembled. It darkened and began to crumble. Nayri pulled her hand away. Again. I'm breaking it again. Cassian crouched down beside her, no closer than 1.5 meters. You're not breaking it. You're changing the density. Just now you made the ground softer. Now do the opposite. Squeeze it. Not outward. Inward. Nayri looked at him. There was something unfamiliar in her eyes. Not anger. Not fear. Trust. Fragile and new, like the first ice on a puddle. She placed her hand back down. She closed her eyes. 10 seconds. The earth trembled. 20. The earth beneath her palm began to harden. 30. The stone grew denser. 40. A crunching sound came from beneath her hand. The earth turned black, like iron. She had compressed the soft shale into something harder than steel. Nayri opened her eyes. She looked at her hand. She looked at the stone. She looked at Cassian. The system flashed. Neri Han, favor 10, plus 5, 15. Gift of density, unlock 1, plus 7, 8%. Reward for Cassian, plus 1 team synergy point. She didn't say anything. She just nodded and went back to work. For 2 hours, she crawled along the trail, palm on the stone. 10 seconds. Softer. Further. Next section. Softer. More. A strip of loose earth stretched for 30 paces. Ivrain sat on the roof. They're coming. 9 o'clock. Night. Darkness. 7 shadows emerged from the forest. Cassian stood on the castle wall and could see nothing, but Ivrain saw with her ears. The first stepped onto the path, the second, the third, the fourth. They walked in a tight group, professionals, silent. The fifth, the sixth, the seventh, all on the loose section. Now, Cassian shouted down. Neri was standing by the wall. She heard him. She took a breath. She placed both palms on the ground and squeezed. It sounded as if the earth itself had screamed. A dull crunch echoed along the trail. The loose shale beneath the 7 mercenaries' feet hardened into stone in 3 seconds. The 7 men froze, knee-deep in rock as hard as iron. They couldn't move their legs. They couldn't pull themselves out. Someone swore. Someone screamed. Someone tried to chop at the stone with a sword. It was useless. Neri had compacted it to the point where steel slid across the surface like glass. Cassian climbed down from the wall. He took the torch. He walked out to them. The 7 men stood on the trail, embedded in stone up to their knees, and looked at him. Their faces were contorted. Their masks had slipped. Beneath them were the faces of ordinary mercenaries, not Duval's soldiers. Hired hands, cheap ones. Cassian stopped in front of them. "Good evening. I have a business proposal for you." Silence. Cassian continued. "Right now I can call for the woman you came to take, and she'll pack the stone up to your thighs, then up to your waist, then up to your chest. You'll become part of the trail, forever." More silence. "Or you can tell me who hired you, how much they paid, and what else they're planning. After that, we'll release your legs and you'll be free to go." "With your legs?" One of the mercenaries spat, the commander, the broad one, with a jagged scar across his eyebrow. He looked at Cassian and sneered. "You're bluffing, Baron." Cassian didn't answer. He turned around. Neri was standing behind him, without gloves, her bare hands in the torchlight. She placed her palm on the stone next to the commander's leg. The stone began to squeeze. The commander felt pressure on his shin. A crunch. Not bones. Stone. The stone was clamping down tighter and tighter around his leg. "Stop!" Cassian raised his hand. Neri removed her hand. The commander was breathing heavily. Sweat was streaming down his face. He licked his lips and began to speak. "Count Duval. 200 gold pieces for the 7 of them. Take the Eastern Princess." Neri. "Alive. In a sack. Take her to his lands. If the Baron tries to interfere, kill the Baron. Dump the body in the Grey Tide. Blame it on bandits." Cassian listened. Then he nodded. "Thank you. Details. Are there any more of Duval's men in the province?" The commander hesitated. "Yes, 1. In the village of Lower Kell, the village headman." Cassian turned to Neri. "Let them go." Neri placed her palms on the stone. She squeezed it differently, in the opposite direction. The stone softened. The mercenaries pulled their legs out one by one. They ran off without looking back. Cassian stood on the path and watched as 7 shadows disappeared into the forest. Neri stood beside him. Her hands were bare. They were trembling. Not from the cold, from the realization. She had just done something no one else on the continent had ever done. She had squeezed and released the stone at will, without destruction, without a curse, on command. Cassian turned to her. "Neri." She looked at him. "You don't have a curse. You have a weapon. And you just saved us all." Neri stood motionless. Then she lowered her head. Then she raised it. Her eyes were shining. She said nothing. She simply put on her gloves and walked toward the castle. But Cassian noticed. She was walking differently. Her back was straighter. Her stride was wider. Like someone who, for the first time in 10 years, wasn't ashamed of what she could do. 6 people stood on the castle wall. All 6 of them. Yvraine, Celeste, Meilin, Aurora, Taeyeon, Lillian. They were looking down. They saw everything. Cassian stood up. Lillian rushed toward him. "Cassie, you're alive." "I'm alive. We're all alive." He looked at the 6 of them. "Tomorrow we'll start building the smelter, and repairing the bridge, and making the rounds of the villages. 34 days, 3,000 gold pieces. We'll manage." Celeste exhaled smoke and, for the first time, spoke without irony. "Maybe." Neri Han, favor 15, plus 10, 25. Cassian looked at the number and thought. At 20, she'd touch his face. The first person in 10 years. It's already happened. She was at 25. She'd crossed the mark without even noticing, because when a person saves others, they forget to count. Aurora had predicted a nighttime attack by Duval's mercenaries, who had come to kidnap Neri. Cassian devised a plan in which Neri used her gift consciously for the first time and walled up 7 mercenaries in stone up to their knees. Interrogating the commander revealed that the village headman of Lower Kell was working for Duval, and Neri's favor rose to 25, with her gift of density unlocked to 8%. The morning of the 4th day began with tea. Taeyeon brought it herself. Cassian sat at the table, studying a map of the province drawn on the back of some old decree. 4 villages. Upper Kell in the north, near the mine dump. Lower Kell in the south, near the broken bridge. East Turn at the edge of the forest. West Turn by the only cultivated field. Taeyeon set the cup in front of him and sat down beside him. Her hands were stained with ink. Her eyes were bloodshot. She hadn't slept for the 2nd night in a row. "I walked around Upper Kell yesterday. While you were catching the mercenaries." Cassian looked up. "Alone." Taeyeon shrugged. "I don't need a guard to count." She unfolded her papers. Cassian looked and saw more than just notes. It was a network. Names, arrows connecting them, numbers next to each name. Who owes whom? Who buys from whom? Who is at odds with whom? Who depends on whom? 12 families in Upper Kell. Brand, the village elder, the richest. 3 cows and a mill. He owes blacksmith Thorn for roof repairs. Thorn owes the widow Martha for grain. Martha owes Brand for field rent. A vicious cycle of debt. No one can pay because everyone is waiting for someone else to pay. Cassian looked at the diagram and saw something familiar. A corporate deadlock. 3 departments that can't function because each is waiting for resources from another. The solution is simple. Break the cycle. Which one of them works best? Taeyeon didn't hesitate. Thorn, the blacksmith. He has golden hands, but no one pays him because everyone owes Brand, and Brand won't let him go. Cassian nodded. "We'll pay off Thorn's debt to Martha." "How much?" 2 gold pieces. We have 11. That'll leave us with 9. But Thorn will be free, and we'll give him a commission that will earn him 20. Taeyeon narrowed her eyes. "What kind of commission?" "Parts for a smelter. Celeste needs a blacksmith. She has a blueprint. She doesn't have the hands to do it. Thorn has the hands. Thorn doesn't have the blueprint. We put them together and get a smelter." Taeyeon was silent. Then an expression appeared on her face that Cassian recognized, the look of someone who sees scattered pieces coming together to form a picture. She opened her mouth and said, "If Thorn pays Marta for the grain, Marta will pay Brand for the rent. Brand will get the money and stop putting pressure on the others. The cycle will break. Everyone will start working." Cassian smiled. For the first time in this world. The system flashed. Taeyeon Yoon, favor 10, plus 5, 15. Gift, golden account. Reclassification, AS unlocked. Provincial debt map. Taeyeon didn't notice. She was already writing, quickly, eagerly, like someone who had finally been allowed to do what she was born to do. Cassian finished his tea, cold, bitter, perfect. He stood up and walked over to Celeste. He found her in the basement. She was standing in front of a blueprint she'd pinned to the wall with nails. Stones were laid out around her, pieces of rock from the mine dump. She was examining them, sniffing them, scraping at them with her fingernail. A pipe smoldered in the corner of her mouth. "I found a blacksmith. His name is Thorn. He's in Upper Kale. He'll make what you need." Celeste didn't turn around. "But how will we pay him?" "We'll pay him by giving him work for the next year. Once the smelter is up and running, he'll need steel for his tools. We'll give him steel. He'll give us forged items. We'll sell them through Taeyong." Celeste turned around. She looked at him. "You think like a merchant." "I think like someone who has no money. It's the same thing." Celeste snorted, almost a smile, almost. Then she grew serious. "There's a problem. The blueprint is incomplete. I need a furnace that can maintain a higher temperature than usual. My magic used to be able to do that, but I don't have my magic anymore." Cassian nodded. He knew her magic hadn't disappeared, it had changed. But it was too early to talk about that. Instead, he pulled something else out of his head, the Besame process. A principle from Earth's 19th century, blowing air through molten metal. The temperature rises due to a chemical reaction, not an external flame. He didn't need magic, he needed physics. He explained it for 40 minutes, using his fingers, drawing diagrams with a stick on the earthen floor of the basement. Celeste listened. At first, skeptically, then attentively, then eagerly. Her eyes burned with a fire that had nothing to do with magic, the fire of the mind. This is madness, but it might work. She grabbed the drawing. She began redrawing it right before his eyes. Her hand flew across the paper. Lines, calculations. She muttered to herself. If the pipe's cross-section is like this, and if we feed air from below instead of from the side, then... She fell silent. She looked at Cassian. "I need 40 hours, and I don't want anyone to disturb me. The basement is yours." She wasn't listening anymore. She was lost in the drawing. Cassian went upstairs. Mei Lin was waiting for him in the hall. She was sitting at a table with a notepad. Written on the notepad was, "I need to talk to you." Cassian sat down across from her. The system flashed. Mei Lin, so. Favorability 8. Recommendation. Conduct a one-on-one review. Format. Written. Duration. 47 minutes. He looked at the recommendation and thought, she doesn't speak. She can't lie, so she remains silent. The only format that works for her is writing. He picked up the slate. He picked up the stylus and wrote, "I'm listening, even if you're writing instead of speaking." Mei Lin looked at his words. Then she began to write, quickly, in small, neat handwriting. For 47 minutes they exchanged notes, 12 pages. She wrote about how her voice used to work, how she would calm crowds with a single word, how the counselors would ask her to address the army before a battle, how, at 17, something happened that changed everything. Counselor Moran blackmailed her mother. She didn't know how. She only knew that her mother cried every night. And one day, Mei Lin walked into the council chamber and said one word to Moran. "Confess." Sojeon's voice. S-class. An absolute command. Moran stood up, turned pale, and left the chamber. An hour later, he was found dead. He chose death over confession. Mei Lin didn't order him to die. She ordered him to tell the truth. He chose otherwise. But the entire court decided she was a murderer, that her voice was a weapon, that she was dangerous, and she's been silent ever since. 4 years. Because the only thing that can come out of her throat is the truth, and the truth kills at court. Cassian read and felt that very professional anger rising inside him. Cold, pure. A 17-year-old girl who tried to protect her mother had been turned into a monster, and she believed it. He wrote the last line. "In my world, silence is sometimes the most honest speech, but if you ever want to speak, I'll be the one to listen." Mei Lin read it. She stared at the words for a long time. Then she looked up. Her eyes were filled with tears. She didn't cry. She was one of those who don't cry. But her eyes glistened. The system flashed. Mei-lin. So. Favorability 8. Plus 12. 20. Gift. Voice of Sojun. Reclassification. S. 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 Lying is impossible. Unlock 5%. 20. Cassian looked at the number. At 20, she would say his name out loud, her first word in 4 years. But not now. He wouldn't rush her. He stood up, nodded to her, left. Yvraine was standing in the hallway. She was wearing his cloak, the very one, the wet baronial cloak he'd draped over her on the first day. She hadn't taken it off. There were unfamiliar footsteps in the kitchen, 3 pairs, the same ones that had been outside the door yesterday. Servants. Cassian nodded. Let's go listen. Taeyeon drew up a map of the province's debts, and Cassian began to break the cycle of indebtedness by hiring the blacksmith Thorn to build a smelter. Cassian explained the principle of the Bessemer process to Celeste, and she went down to the basement for 40 hours to redraw the blueprint. A review with Mei-lin revealed the story of advisor Moran and raised her favor to 20, with Dar's reclassification to SS. There were 3 servants in the kitchen. The old man Cassian had seen behind the door on the first evening, a middle-aged woman with hands red from doing laundry, and a guy no older than 20 with shifty eyes. They froze when Cassian entered. Yvraine followed him. She stopped by the wall and tilted her head. She was listening. Cassian sat down on a stool at the table. He looked at the 3 of them. The system didn't work on ordinary people without the gift, but he didn't need the system. He'd been reading people for 29 years without any magic. The old man. His hands were steady. His eyes were direct. He wasn't guilty. The woman. Her shoulders were tense. She was staring at the floor. She was afraid, but not of Cassian. Of something else. The young man. Sweat on his forehead. His hands behind his back. He was hiding something. Or hiding a tremor. Cassian started with the old man. What's your name? Hagen. Baron. You've been working here a long time, Hagen. The old man nodded. 30 years. I served the previous Baron too before the province was abandoned. Cassian turned to the woman. Marin. 12 years. She spoke quietly and didn't look up. Cassian turned to the young man. He swallowed. Dine. 3 months. 3 months. Cassian tilted his head. Who hired you? Dane turned pale. Me. I was sent from Lower Kell. The village headman said the castle needed people. Cassian looked at Yvraine. She nodded slightly. His heart was beating twice as fast. He's lying. Cassian turned back to Dane. How much did Duval pay you? Dane flinched. He opened his mouth. He closed it. His eyes darted around. Then he suddenly fell to his knees. Please, Baron, I didn't mean to. The village headman, Gren, said that if I didn't report it, he'd drive my mother out of the village. She's old. She has nowhere to go. I was just passing on what I saw. I swear I didn't touch anything. Cassian looked at him. 20 years old. Just a boy. Terrified. Trapped between 2 forces, each of which could crush him. He'd seen people like this in Seattle. Interns whom senior managers used as spies. They'd plant information on them, force them to report back, threaten them with firing. There was only one solution. Take away the fear. Stand up. Dine stood up. His legs were shaking. You'll tell Gren exactly what I tell you to tell him. Not a word more. Not a word less. Your mother will stay in the village. I'll take care of that. But if you pass on even one word I haven't approved, you'll be out of this castle the very same day. Understood. Dine nodded. Quickly. Often. Like a little fool. Cassian turned to Hagen and Marin. You two, I need the truth. What's happening in the province, how people are living, what they need. Get started. Hagen spoke first. He talked for an hour. The province had been dying for 12 years, ever since the former baron left and never returned. The villages existed on their own. Each survived as best it could. The village elders had become petty rulers. In Lower Kell, Gren took a third of the harvest. In Upper Kell, Brand controlled the mill and set the price for grinding. Eastern Thurn lived by hunting and bartering. Western Thurn grew grain and fed everyone else in exchange for protection. The gray tide was approaching from the east, slowly, year after year. A strip of dead land where the gifts ceased to work. It was still far away. But Eastern Thorn could already feel its breath. The hunt had grown worse. The game was disappearing. People were on edge. Cassian absorbed the information. Every name, every number, every connection. He was building in his mind the same map that Taiyan was drawing on paper. Only his map was about people, not money. Who was afraid of what? Who was hoping for what? Who was willing to work if given a reason? When Hagen finished, Cassian nodded. Marin. She looked up, timidly. And she said something that turned everything upside down. Baron, there's a woman in the kitchen. An old woman. She came 2 days ago. She said she was looking for work. I let her in because we need extra hands. But she's strange. She doesn't talk. She just stares. And she cries when she thinks no one is watching. Cassian froze. He looked at Ivrain. She nodded. I can hear her. She's in the back room behind the kitchen. Her breathing is uneven. She was crying 5 minutes ago. Cassian stood up. He walked to the back room. He opened the door. An old woman was sitting there, thin. Her gray hair was tucked under a scarf. Her face was etched with wrinkles, but her eyes were young, sharp, brown. Cassian looked at her thread. The thread was there, semi-transparent, dull, but it was there. Unknown, obvious rank. No, hidden rank. Undefined, blocked, undefined. Connection. Meilin So, maternal line. Cassian stopped in the doorway. Meilin's mother. Here, disguised as a cook. She was hiding her eyes. Her hands were clasped on her lap. Cassian closed the door. He leaned his back against it. He thought. Meilin had been silent for 4 years. Her mother was in hiding. Both were afraid. Both bore the same guilt. Advisor Moran had blackmailed her mother. Meilin had tried to protect her. Moran was dead. Meilin had fallen silent, and her mother had vanished. And now she was here, watching her daughter from afar and crying when no one was looking. Cassian knew he couldn't force this meeting. Meilin was 20. At 50, she'll tell the truth about Moran. Her mother was the key to that truth. But if they were brought together now, before Meilin was ready, everything would fall apart. The system confirmed it. Recommendation: do not intervene. Let events take their natural course. Cassian opened the door. He looked at the old woman. What's your name? She looked up. Su-Yan. Do you want to stay, Su-Yan? A nod. Then stay. He stepped out. He closed the door. Ivrain was standing in the hallway. She heard everything. She knows. Cassian looked at her. She knows what? That this woman cries when she hears Meilin's voice. Not her voice. Meilin doesn't speak. When she hears her footsteps. Ivrain was silent. That's her mother. Yes. You'll tell her. No. Not yet. Ivrain bowed her head. Understood. She turned and walked down the hallway. Then she stopped. Without turning around, she said, Cassian. He froze. It was the first time she'd called him by his name. Not Baron, not Sir. Cassian. The system flashed. Ivrain Alistair, favorability 12, +3, 15. Ivrain continued quietly. Thank you. For the coat. She left. Cassian stood in the dark hallway and thought that in 4 days he had learned more about each of the 7 than anyone else had in their entire lives, and that every bit of that knowledge was not a weapon, but a responsibility. Where does care end and exploitation begin? That question hung over him like a knife. He knew the answer. As long as he was helping a specific person rather than the system, everything was fine. But in Seattle, he'd been saving interns. Here, he was saving wives. In Seattle, a line could be drawn. Here, it blurred every day. On the 6th day, Celeste emerged from the basement, black with soot. Her eyes were red. The pipe had gone out, and she hadn't noticed. She was holding a new blueprint in her hands. She placed it on the table in front of Cassian and said one word. "It works." Cassian unfolded the blueprint. It was no longer the rough sketch she'd kept for 3 years. It was a full-fledged design. A double-bottomed furnace, a system for blowing air through the molten metal, channels for slag removal, a casting mold. The Bessemer process adapted for Turnhold's materials. No magic, pure physics. Cassian looked at the drawing and saw genius. Not his own, hers. He'd given her an idea from another world. She'd turned that idea into a mechanism that could change the entire metallurgy of the continent. How long would it take to build? 10 days, if the blacksmith is good. Thorn is good. Celeste nodded. Then 5. She took the blueprint and headed for the door. She stopped, turned around. Cassian. For the second time that day, someone had called him by name. This blow-through principle. How do you know about it? Not a single scientist on the continent had thought of that. Cassian looked her in the eyes. The truth was both simple and impossible. I read about it in a book, a very old book, from a place that's long since disappeared. Celeste looked at him for a long time. She didn't believe him, but she didn't argue. She turned and walked away. The system flashed. Celeste, Mirage, favorability 8, plus 14, 22, 22. In 28 points, she'll reveal who her mother really is. But before that, there was the smelter. There were 3,000 gold pieces. There was a bridge across the Kell. Cassian called out to Taeyeon. It was time to head to the villages. The two of them set off together. Upper Kell was a 2-hour walk away. The roads were washed out. There were no horses. Cassian walked through the mud and thought that in Seattle he used to take taxis to rallies. Here, his taxi were his own 2 feet. Taeyeon walked beside him, silently, with papers tucked under her arm. She didn't complain. She never complained at all. Cassian noticed that her breathing remained steady despite the pace. She wasn't fragile. She was used to hardship. A year of marriage to an old man at 16 had taught her not to show her fatigue. Upper Kell greeted them warily. 30 houses, smoking chimneys, chickens in the streets, children hiding behind fences and staring with wide eyes. Village head Brand came out to meet them. A burly man with a red face and small eyes. He looked down at Cassian and smiled that smile that meant he'd already decided he was dealing with a nobody. The Baron. "We've heard of you." Cassian didn't waste time on pleasantries. "I need the blacksmith, Thorn." Brand frowned. "Thorn is busy. He's working on my orders." Cassian looked at Taeyeon. She unfolded the papers. Thorn owed the widow Marta 2 gold pieces for grain. "Here's the receipt. We've bought out that debt. Thorn now owes the province, not Martha, and the province is releasing him from his debt in exchange for his labor." Brand blinked. He hadn't expected this. He was used to debts in his village functioning like chains. Everyone owed everyone else, and through that, everyone depended on him. And now this skinny baron and his weary wife had arrived with their papers and, with a single stroke, removed a link from the chain. Brand opened his mouth. "You can't." Taeyeon held up the paper. A royal decree granting the baron the right to redeem intra-provincial debts. Paragraph 42, subparagraph 3. "Shall I continue, or do you agree?" Cassian looked at Taeyeon and saw in her a person the world had failed to recognize. She wasn't an accountant. She was a weapon, precise and ruthless. Brand clenched his teeth. He backed down. Thorn appeared 10 minutes later, short, wiry, hands like shovels. He looked at Celeste's blueprint and his eyes lit up. This can be built. 7 days. Give me iron for the fasteners and clay for the mold, and I'll build it. Cassian nodded. The iron would be provided. He looked toward the northern hill, the mine dump. Everyone thought it was empty. Taeyong thought it was a dead end. But Celeste said there was ore there, just not the kind they were looking for. And Aurora. Aurora had said something about silver, under the northern hill, 4 cubits to the left. But that was a prophecy for the arc's finale. That was still a long way off. Right now, they needed iron, ordinary iron, for the smelter's supports, which would later smelt the unusual ore. On the way back, Taeyeon walked in silence. Then she spoke up. "You're a strange baron." "Why?" "Because you gave me the keys to the treasury. Because you took me with you to the negotiations. Because you never once tried to check my calculations. You trust me, and I don't understand why." Cassian walked through the mud, thinking about how to respond. "I had someone in Seattle, a financial analyst. Her name was Sarah. They tried to fire her 3 times because she argued with the director over every budget. I looked at her work. She never made a mistake. In 7 years, not once. I told the director, 'You can fire her, but then I'll leave with her because I don't work for a company that fires people for being right.'" Taeyeon was silent for a long time. Then she spoke softly. "How did it end?" "Sarah was promoted. The director was fired. 2 years later, Sarah became the CFO. Taeyeon paused. She looked at Cassian. Her hands holding the papers trembled. Taeyeon Yoon. Favorability 15. Plus 3. 18. She didn't say anything. But when they returned to the castle, she brought him tea, herself. She brewed it from the herbs she'd found in the garden. Bitter and strong, just like her. Cassian drank it and thought that 18 was already close to 20. At 20, she'd fall asleep on his shoulder. Not out of love, out of exhaustion. Because for the first time in her life, she could let herself get tired next to someone without fearing that she'd be judged for it. On the 8th day, a letter arrived. A messenger came from the capital, young, frightened, his horse covered in soap. He handed Cassian a scroll bearing the seal of the Order of the Bright Flame and galloped off without waiting for a reply. Cassian broke the seal. He read it. To Baron Cassian Vale, Turnhold Province. The Chancellery of the Order of the Bright Flame has received reports of a non-canonical awakening of the gift within the territory entrusted to you. Bishop Walter Brand will arrive on an inspection visit in 14 days to investigate for demonic influence. The presence of all bearers of the gift is mandatory. Failure to appear for the inspection is punishable under the heresy statute. Signature. Seal. Cassian reread it twice. 14 days. Not in a month. Not after tax season. In 14 days. Ahead of schedule. He crumpled the letter and entered the hall. All 7 were there. It had become a habit. The morning gathering. Porridge from Lillian. Tea from Taeyeon. Silence from Ivrain. Notes from Mei Lin. Aurora's muttering. Neri's silence. Smoke from Celeste's pipe. 8 people at one table. Almost a team. Cassian placed the letter on the table. They read it. Silence. Taeyeon turned pale. She was the first to speak. The Inquisition. If they find out that the gifts have awakened without the Order's blessing, they'll declare it heresy. They'll burn us. All of us. Celeste exhaled a puff of smoke. Not all of us. Only those who have a gift. You and me for sure. Neri and Ivrain maybe. Cassian definitely not. He doesn't have a gift. Cassian sat down. No one will be burned. Celeste looked at him. You don't understand, Baron. The Order isn't a church in the usual sense. It's an army. Bishop Walter has 30 knights and every one of them is awakened. A rank at the very least. We can't fight them. Cassian nodded. We won't. Silence. Cassian continued. Battle is their territory. They're ready for it. They're waiting for it. They want us to resist because resistance is proof of guilt. We won't give them that." "What then?" Mei Lin raised a small tablet. 2 words were written on it. "A public trial." Cassian looked at her. She looked at him. There was understanding in her eyes. She knew. She knew that her silence was a weapon that no one on the continent could even imagine. Cassian nodded. "Exactly. According to the laws of the Order, anyone accused of heresy has the right to a trial of the gift. Open, public, before witnesses. The prosecutor must prove demonic influence. The accused has the right to speak in their own defense. And the key word here is speak." Celeste narrowed her eyes. She understood. Mei Lin, her gift. She can speak only the truth. And if she speaks at the trial, every word she utters will be the truth. Not because she's decided not to lie, but because she's physically incapable of doing so. Cassian nodded. But for that to happen, Mei Lin would have to speak, for the first time in 4 years. Everyone looked at her. Mei Lin sat motionless. The slate lay on the table. The stylus was in her hand. She wasn't writing. She was staring into space. Cassian waited. He wasn't going to pressure her. He wasn't going to ask. He wasn't going to force her. If she wasn't ready, he'd find another way. Mei Lin picked up the slate. She wrote, "I need time, as much as it takes." Mei Lin looked at him. Then she lowered her eyes to the slate. She wrote one more word. "Thank you." Cassian nodded and moved on to the next item. "While Mei Lin thinks, we'll build the smelter. 30 days until the tax. 14 until the Inquisitor arrives. We need to be ready for both." Taiyan sat up straight. "Yes, the bridge over the Kell. It needs to be repaired before the Inquisitor arrives. If we don't have a bridge, we won't be able to transport the gold or bring witnesses to the trial." Taiyan frowned. "It's a stone bridge. The central arch has collapsed. We need a stonemason, or—" She fell silent. She looked at Neri. Neri looked at her hands. Cassian waited. He didn't offer. He was waiting for one of them to suggest it themselves. Neri raised her head. "I can compact the stone. If we find the debris from the arch, gather it up and compress it." Cassian nodded. But he needed something else. Not to compact it, to change its shape, to make a new arch out of the fragments. "Neri, do you remember what you did with the soil on the trail? First you softened it, then you compressed it." "Yes. If I soften the stone to the consistency of clay, mold it into shape, and then compact it." Neri froze. She was thinking. Cassian could see her mind at work. She was neither a monster, nor a beast, nor a cursed being. She was an engineer who didn't know she was an engineer. "It's like forging." She said this slowly, with surprise in her voice. "Heat it, shape it, temper it, only without fire." Cassian nodded. "Neri Han, favor 25, no changes, but the gift of density, unlock 8, +2, 10%. She understood the principle. It was worth 2% of the unlock. Understanding was the key, not strength, not training, understanding what she was doing and why. Celeste chuckled. "A blacksmith without fire, that's it." She paused, looked at Neri, then at her own hands, then at Neri again. Cassian noticed. Celeste was thinking the same thing he was, a blacksmith without fire. But what if a blacksmith without fire were to find fire? If Celeste's hidden gift, the ability to transfer magic to others, could pass its heat onto Neri. Forging plus flame. Synergy. Team synergy. But Celeste didn't know about her hidden gift, and Cassian couldn't tell her. He could only set the stage, put them side by side, let them work together, and wait for the spark to ignite on its own. "Tomorrow, you and Neri are going to the bridge." Celeste frowned. "Why do I have to go?" "You need to see the river, for the water wheel blueprint. The smelter needs a constant source of air for blowing. A water wheel on the Kell River will turn the bellows." Celeste took a long drag on her pipe. "A water wheel. Another idea from your book." Cassian shrugged. The book was very detailed. Celeste looked at him. Someday you'll tell me what kind of book it is. Someday. Aurora looked up. She was sitting on the floor in the corner, weaving something out of thread, a braid or a bracelet or a dream catcher. Cute. Cassian turned to her. You're going to be killed on Thursday. Not this one. The next one. I already told you. But now I see who. Everyone froze. Cassian didn't flinch. Who? Aurora smiled, that smile that could mean anything. The man with the face of a friend. I can't see anymore. Sorry, sweetheart. The lines are getting tangled. She went back to weaving. The system flashed. Aurora Kincaid, favor 20, plus 3, 23. Gift, 1 line, unlock 5%. She could see more clearly. Next to him, the lines of the future were collapsing, but 5% wasn't enough. She saw fragments, snippets, a man with her friend's face. Cassian ran through everyone he knew in his head. Hagen, Dane, Marin, Thorne, Brand, Merc. A man with her friend's face, the one he'd trust. And who would stab him in the back? Classic. Every group has one of those. Cassian ended the meeting. Everyone dispersed. Lillian was clearing the table. Cassian helped her. She smiled at him. Cassie, yeah, I like it here. Cassian paused. He looked at her. A 17-year-old girl in a ruined castle on the edge of the Deadlands, with 7 women she didn't know and 1 man without a gift. And she likes it here. Because they feed her here. Because they don't chase her away here. Because someone here set a second plate in front of her. Lillian rose, favor 20, no change. But a faint glow burned next to the thread. The amplifier was working, in the background, uncontrolled, simply because Lillian was near people who were getting better. The fireplace burned brighter when she sat nearby. Ivrain could hear farther when Lillian stood nearby. Nayri clenched the stone tighter when Lillian was in the same room. The rarest gift on the continent, in a girl whom everyone considered empty. A letter arrived from the Order of the Clear Flame announcing Bishop Walter's visit in 14 days to investigate heresy. Cassian proposed a strategy for a public trial of the gift, in which Mei Lin, with her gift of absolute truth, would be the key figure. Nayri realized that she could not only harden the stone, but also shape it like a blacksmith, and Avror predicted an assassination attempt on Cassian by a man with the face of a friend. The bridge across the Kell looked like a skeleton. The stone piers still stood. The central arch had collapsed. Debris lay in the river. The water rushed over it, muddy and swift. Nayri stood on the bank and looked down. Celeste stood beside her. The pipe had gone out. She had forgotten about it. She looked at the river and counted. Cassian saw her lips moving. The speed of the current, the depth, the width. She was already designing a water wheel in her head. Nayri, the arch, you can do it. Nayri didn't answer. She climbed down, toward the water, toward the debris. Cassian and Celeste watched from above. Nayri reached the first piece of debris, a boulder the size of a barrel. She took off her glove. She placed her palm on the stone. 10 seconds. The stone began to lighten, to soften. Under her hand, the hard granite became as pliable as clay. She wrapped both hands around it and began to knead it, to shape it, like a potter shapes a pot. Only this pot weighed 300 pounds. Celeste watched in silence. Then she said quietly, "That's impossible." Cassian said nothing. Nayri worked. Fragment by fragment, soften, mold, squeeze, attach it to the support, compact it. After being compacted, each piece of stone became 10 times harder than the original. She was building an arch out of the pieces, without mortar, without tools, with her bare hands. 3 hours later, she climbed out of the river, wet up to her waist. Her hands were shaking. Her face was gray with exhaustion. But the arch stood, rough, uneven, without a single seam, monolithic. Celeste approached the arch. She tapped it with her knuckles. The sound was like striking metal. She turned to Nayri. and for the first time she looked at her not as a neighbor, but as an equal. Neyri stood there, wet and gray, swaying with exhaustion. Cassian approached. He held out his hand. Neyri looked at his palm, then at his face. Then she took his hand. No gloves, bare palm to bare palm. Her first human touch in 10 years. 3 seconds. 5. The stone beneath them didn't budge. Cassian's skin didn't turn black. Nothing broke. Neyri stared at their hands and held her breath. Cassian squeezed her hand. "Thank you." Neyri yanked her hand away. She turned away, but Cassian had seen it. The corner of her mouth twitched. Not a smile. The shadow of a smile. The ghost of a shadow of a smile. Neyri Han, favor 25, plus 5, 30, gift, density, unlock 10, plus 5, 15%, 30. She had crossed the touch threshold, which had been set at 20, and gone further. She touched him of her own accord, not because the system told her to, because she wanted to. Cassian stood on the new bridge and thought it was the ugliest bridge on the continent, and the sturdiest. They returned to the castle by evening. Ivrain met them at the threshold. She stood straight and tense. Horsemen. From the south. 12 of them. Heavy horses. Armor. One of them smells of incense. Cassian stopped. Incense. The church. It's not the Inquisitor. The letter said 14 days. 8 have passed. Ivrain shook her head. Not the Inquisitor. Someone else. Younger. A clear voice. He's singing a psalm as he rides. Cassian hurried into the castle. He gathered everyone. 12 horsemen of the order. It's not Walter. It's a reconnaissance mission. His men, sent ahead. Taeyeon turned pale. They're looking for evidence. Before the bishop's visit. If they find anything, there won't be a trial. They'll just take us away. Cassian thought quickly. Evidence? Of what? The awakening of the gift without a blessing. Neyri just built a bridge with her bare hands. Ivrain can hear from 2 kilometers away. The bridge. It can't be hidden. Anyone who sees it will realize it's not the work of masons. It's the work of the gift. Cassian turned to Neyri. The bridge. We need to make it look ordinary. Neyri didn't understand. Right now the arch looks like a monolith. No joints. No stonemason on the continent would build an arch without mortar. It screams, Dar. You need to add joints. Cracks. Make it look like ordinary work. Neyri blinked. You want me to ruin my work? I want you to hide your work. For now. Neyri clenched her jaw. Then she nodded and ran toward the bridge. Cassian turned to Mei Lin. He didn't need to explain to her. She was already writing on her slate. I'll meet them, officially, as a representative of the province. They won't touch a mute woman. Cassian nodded. But we need more. We need to give them what they're looking for, but not what's actually there. Dane, Cassian called the young spy. The boy came running a minute later. Dane, when the horsemen arrive, you'll tell them that the Baron tried to perform the awakening ritual, but it didn't work. That all 7 wives are talentless. That the Baron is in despair. That the smelter is being built by ordinary workers using ordinary technology. Got it. Dane nodded, quickly, often. Go. Cassian turned to Celeste. The smelter. Celeste understood immediately. She had to get rid of the blueprint, hide all the records. If they saw the design, they'd realize this wasn't an ordinary furnace. She went down to the basement. Cassian turned to Aurora. She was sitting in the corner, twirling a button and smiling. Aurora, what do you see? Aurora looked up. They'll leave tomorrow morning. They won't find anything. But one of them will come back. In 3 days, at night, alone, without armor. He'll be looking for the basement. Cassian nodded. Thank you. He turned to Ivrain. You'll be our ears. Every word they say to each other, every whisper, every order. I want to know everything. Ivrain nodded. For the first time, her expression wasn't one of fear or uncertainty. It was something else. Pride. Small, fragile, but real. For the first time, her ability was needed. Not as a curiosity, not as a cup and ball trick, as a weapon, as a shield. The horsemen arrived an hour later. 12 knights of the order in white cloaks with gold embroidery. At their head was a young chaplain, about 25 years old, a handsome face, kind eyes, a warm smile. Cassian looked at him and remembered Aurora's words, "A man with the face of a friend." The chaplain dismounted. He bowed. "Baron Vale, I am Brother Lorenz. Bishop Walter sent us to ensure that the province is ready for the visit. We won't stay long, just one night, if you'll allow it." Cassian smiled. "Of course." "We have porridge," Lorenz laughed. A light, open, friendly laugh. Mei Lin stepped forward. She bowed and held out a small plaque with a greeting. Lorenz read it and smiled at her, gently, without condescension. Mei Lin didn't lower her gaze. She stood like a wall, quiet, impenetrable. 12 knights took their places in the courtyard. Lorenz entered the castle. He looked around. He saw a leaky roof, empty rooms, a table with 9 bowls, a fireplace with a fire burning in it. His gaze lingered on the fire. Then it drifted on. Cassian watched. Lorenz was surveying the castle like a man searching for something specific. But he did so with a smile, with jokes, with warm words, a true professional. That evening at the table, Lorenz spoke of faith, of the clear flame, about how the gods bestow gifts and how important it is for awakening to occur according to the canon, through blessing, through ritual, through the order. Cassian listened and nodded. Inside, he was compiling a profile. Lorenz, young, ambitious, a sincere believer. But he believes in the system, not in people. A dangerous type. The most dangerous. Because he isn't evil, he's righteous. And righteous people who believe in the wrong system destroy more than any villain. Ivrain sat in the corner. Her eyes were closed. She was listening. Every word, every breath, every beat of Lorenz's heart. That night, when the knights had gone to bed, Cassian got up to Ivrain. She was waiting for him on the roof. He had been talking to 2 knights by the stables. He said, "Search the cellar. If there are any blueprints or traces of magic, take them and leave. Don't wait until morning." Cassian nodded. The cellar was empty. Celeste had taken everything out. The blueprints were hidden in a hollow tree behind the wall. The records had been burned. The knights searched the cellar and found only bare walls. In the morning, Lorenz left. He smiled. He bowed. He wished them good health. And he rode off. Ivrain stood on the roof and listened as 12 horses rode off to the south. 2 kilometers away, Lorenz said to his lieutenant, "Talentless, all 7 of them. The Baron is pathetic. We rode here for 2 days for nothing, but the cellar was too clean. I'll be back in 3 days, alone, at night." Cassian stood below and listened as Ivrain repeated every word. And he thought, Aurora was right. Lorenz will return. In 3 days, at night, alone. He had to be ready, not for a fight, for a conversation. Because if there was even one way to turn the right person from an enemy into an ally, Cassian would find it. Or he'd die on Thursday. For 3 days, Cassian prepared, not for a fight, for a conversation. The most important conversation of his life. In both lives. Lorenz will return at night, alone, without armor. He'll be looking for the basement, and he'll find it, because Cassian will let him find it. But not the blueprints, not the traces of magic. Something else. During the day, he worked as usual. The smelter was expanding. Thorn brought the first parts from Upper Kell. Iron fasteners, pipes, dampers. Celeste supervised the assembly. She no longer sat in the basement. She stood on the platform by the northern hill next to the mine dump and directed 5 men from the village who were hauling stones. The pipes smoked. Her voice rang out. She was in her element. Neri worked nearby, silently, with her hands. She was compacting the foundation for the furnace. The stone beneath her palms turned black and hard as obsidian. Two people who had never known each other before were working 4 meters apart, and Cassian saw how their threads began to vibrate in unison. Team synergy. Still weak, still imperceptible to them, but the system was recording it. The synergy between Celeste and Neyri. 2%. Activated when working together. Effect. The density of the material Neyri was working on increased by 8% in Celeste's presence. Reason. Unconscious transfer of magical energy through touching a shared object. Celeste didn't know she was giving away her energy. Neyri didn't know she was receiving it, but the furnace they were building together was stronger than anything either of them could have made alone. Cassian watched and said nothing. Taiyun traveled through the villages. Every evening she returned with new records. The debt map was expanding. Lower Kel, village head Gren. That very same man, Duval. Taiyun found a discrepancy in his accounting. Gren was taking a third of the village's harvest, but paying only a tithe to the provincial treasury. He was keeping the difference for himself. 12 years. Cassian looked at the numbers. If you do the math, Gren owes the province 47 gold pieces. Not a huge sum, but enough to support the village for a month, or to buy supplies for the smelter. We're not going after Gren for now. Taiyun raised an eyebrow. Why? Because Gren works for Duval. If we go after Gren, Duval will find out that we know, and he'll strike before we're ready. Taiyun paused. Then she nodded, slowly, with an expression that said she disagreed, but acknowledged the logic. Cassian knew that look. Sarah from Seattle had looked at him the same way when he asked her to wait before reporting the purchasing director's theft. She waited. She gathered more evidence. And when she struck, Director wasn't just fired, he was sent to prison. Patience. Aurora wandered through the castle. She was talking to herself, or to the future, or to the past. Sometimes she would stop in the middle of a room and stare at the wall. Then she would smile and keep walking. Cassian noticed that she had started to mix up her words less often around him. Before, every third sentence had been nonsense. Now it was every 10th. Next to him, her future collapsed into a single line, and her thoughts cleared up. Aurora Kincaid, Favor 23. Gift, 1 line, unlocked 5%. Slowly, but steadily. On the third night, Cassian sat in the basement, alone, waiting. Ivrain was on the roof, 1 horse, from the south, lightweight, no armor. He had tied her up behind the hill. He was walking, across the moat, through the kitchen, just like last time. Cassian lit a candle. 1. He placed it on the table. He sat down. The basement door opened quietly. Lorenz entered. No cloak, no weapons, plain clothes, his face hidden by a hood. He saw Cassian and froze. Cassian nodded toward the chair across from him. Sit down. Lorenz didn't move. Then he slowly sat down. He took off his hood. A handsome face, kind eyes. But there was something new in those eyes now. Wariness. You knew I'd come. I knew. How? Because you're an honest man, Lorenz, and honest men always come back to check. Silence. The candle crackled. Cassian leaned forward. You're looking for heresy. You won't find it, because there isn't any. Lorenz pressed his lips together. I've heard that the blind girl in this castle can hear a whisper from 2 kilometers away, and that the woman in gloves builds bridges with her bare hands. Cassian's expression didn't change. Who told you that? Lorenz didn't answer. Cassian continued. Let me ask you a question. Just one. If you answer honestly, I'll answer any question you have. Honestly, too. Lorenz hesitated. Then he nodded. When you were a boy, before the order, before the knights, before the bishop, why did you want to serve the flame? Lorenz blinked. A pause. 20 seconds. 30. Cassian counted. 40. To help people. Cassian nodded. And how many did you help? Lorenz opened his mouth, closed it. The candle was burning down. Shadows danced on the walls. Cassian spoke quietly. There are 7 women living in this castle who were cast out by their own families. Not for crimes, but because they were born different from what their fathers and mothers wanted. You can go back to Walter and tell him this is heresy. He'll come, he'll burn us, and you'll save the order from 7 women who've done no harm to anyone. Or you can go back and tell the truth, that there's no heresy here, only people, tired and frightened, who, for the first time in their lives, are eating at the same table and aren't afraid. Lorenz looked at him. His eyes were shining. He was silent for a long time. Then he stood up, turned toward the door, stopped. I'll tell Walter that the cellar is clear, that the princesses are talentless, that you aren't worth his time. But he'll come anyway, because he was ordered to. Not by the order, from outside. Cassian understood. The tablet. The order didn't decide on its own to check Turnhold. It was ordered to. Lorenz left, quietly, just as he'd come. Yvraine followed him with her ears all the way to the hill. He mounted his horse, stood there, for a long time. Then he rode south. Cassian sat in the cellar, staring at the burnt-out candle. A man with the face of a friend. Aurora had said he would kill Cassian on Thursday, but Lorenz didn't kill him. He left. So either Aurora was wrong, or Thursday hadn't come yet, or the killer was someone else. The smelter started up on the 20th day. Celeste stood in front of the furnace, black with soot. Her eyes were ablaze. The pipe went out, and she didn't even notice. Thorn was pumping the bellows. Air flowed through the pipes into the molten metal. The temperature rose. The ore from the stockpile melted. Slag separated. Metal flowed into the molds. Not gold, not silver. Steel. Pure, fast steel. The carbon content was lower than that of any blacksmith on the continent. Light, strong, cheap. Celeste ran her hand over the first ingot. It works. Your crazy principle works. Cassian stood nearby. It's not my principle. It's your furnace. Celeste looked at him. For the first time ever, she didn't smirk. She didn't throw a barb his way. She just looked at him and said quietly, "Thank you." Then she turned away and yelled at Thorn that the temperature was dropping and they needed to pump faster. But Cassian saw it. He saw that she had smiled. For 1 second. Just one. Celeste Mirage. Favor 22. Plus 8. 30. Steel was a commodity. Taiyun did the math. 1 ingot of high-speed steel on the market in the neighboring barony was worth 5 gold pieces. The smelter produced 20 ingots a day, 100 gold pieces a day, 1,000 in 10 days. In 20 days before taxes, they'd have 2,000. But they needed 3,000. Cassian called a meeting. 20 days. We'll earn 2,000 from steel. We need another 1,000. Taiyun nodded. There's an option. Headman Gren's dead. 47 gold pieces. Plus the trade duties from Lower Kell that Gren hasn't paid for 12 years. Another 120. Total, 167. We're short 833. Aurora raised her hand. Silver. Everyone looked at her. Aurora smiled. Beneath the northern hill, 4 cubits to the left of the main mine shaft, a forgotten vein. Silver. Pure. 312 pounds per cubic meter. Cassian looked at her. You can see it clearly. Aurora tilted her head. 1 line, sweetheart. Just 1. Her eyes were clear, pure, no haze, no confusion. Next to Cassian and next to Lillian, who was sitting by the fireplace knitting a scarf for her cat, her gift was operating at 12%, and that 12% gave her a level of accuracy she hadn't had in 8 years. Aurora Kincaid, favor 23, plus 12, 35. Gift, single line, unlock 5, plus 7, 12%. Cassian sent Neyri and Celeste to the northern hill. They dug for 3 hours. Neyri softened the rock with her hands. Celeste stood nearby, unable to understand why Neri worked faster right next to her. But she didn't ask. She was used to Turnhold's oddities. 4 elbows to the left, just as Aurora had said. A silver vein, wide, bright. 312 pounds per cubic meter. Not an estimate, exact. Celeste stood in front of the vein and said nothing. Then she turned to Cassian. That's impossible. What exactly? Everything. The girl who sees the future found the silver that Royal Intelligence hadn't been able to find for 12 years. Cassian shrugged. Royal Intelligence was digging in the wrong place. Celeste narrowed her eyes. You knew. No, Aurora knew. I just asked. Celeste looked at him. There was something new in her gaze. Not respect. Something deeper. Something more dangerous. 3 days later, they smelted the first batch of silver. Taiyan did the math. Steel plus silver plus Gren's debt. 2,100 gold pieces. They were 900 short. 14 days until tax day. Cassian didn't panic. He knew they'd find the 900. Because the smelter was running every day, and every day brought in 100 gold pieces from the steel. 9 days, 900 gold pieces. He'd make it. Barely, but he'd make it, if nothing happened. It happened on the 24th day. Ivrain came running down from the roof. The army, from the west. 400 men, horses, a supply train, banners, a lion and an axe. Duval. Cassian went out onto the wall. The horizon was clear. The army was far away. 2 days' march. But Ivrain could hear 2 kilometers away, and Lillian stood next to her, amplifying the sound. Ivrain could hear 3 kilometers away. 400 men, 40 horsemen, 3 siege engines. Duval was tired of waiting. He was going to take Turnhold himself. Cassian stood on the wall and counted. 40 defenders, village militiamen, no armor, no training, against 400 professionals. Neri stood beside him. I can wall up the front ranks, the first 20, maybe 30. Then I'll collapse from exhaustion, and 370 will remain. Celeste stood on the other side. If only I had my fire. Cassian looked at her, then at Neri, then at Celeste. Then back at Neri, then back at Celeste. He saw their threads. Side by side, the threads vibrated. Command synergy. 2%. No, 3. The threads trembled. They reached toward each other. They wanted to connect. Celeste, stand next to Neri. Put your hand on her shoulder. Celeste frowned. Why? Just do it. Celeste looked at Neri. Neri looked at Celeste. Something passed between them. Not words, not a glance. Understanding. 2 people who had worked side by side for 20 days and hadn't noticed they'd become a team. Celeste placed her hand on Neri's shoulder. The threads flared. The system erupted with text. Team synergy activated. Celeste Mirage. Hidden gift. Magic transfer. Activation 15%. Neri Han. Boost received. Gift of density. Temporary bonus. Plus 300% to radius of effect. Plus 200% to processing density. Celeste pulled her hand back. She looked at her palm, then at Neri. What was that? Neri stood there, trembling. Not from fear, from the power. She felt her gift flare up inside her, stronger than ever. I can do it. She turned to Cassian. Her eyes were ablaze. I can do more. Much more. Cassian looked at Celeste. Celeste stood there, pale, stunned. She had given something away, given away a part of herself. And for the first time in 3 years, she felt her magic. Not fire, not a flame. Something else, something better. My gift, she whispered. It hasn't burned out. It had changed. Cassian nodded. You're no longer a torch, Celeste. You're a lighter for others' torches, and that's 1,000 times more valuable. The smelter began operating and started producing quick steel at a rate of 100 gold pieces a day. Aurora had pinpointed the location of the silver vein beneath the northern hill. Duval's army of 400 men marched on Turnhold, and at that moment Cassian activated the synergy between Celeste and Neyri, revealing Celeste's hidden gift as a conduit for magical energy. Duval's army reached Turnhold on the 26th day. 400 men, 40 horsemen, 3 siege engines, banners bearing a lion and an axe. Count Hortense Duval rode at the head of the column on a white colt. A large man, broad shoulders, a beard, small, intelligent eyes. He stopped in front of the new bridge across the Kell and looked at it. Then he looked at the castle. Then he smiled. Cassian stood on the wall. All 7 of them stood nearby. Neyri without gloves. Celeste with a hand on her shoulder. Ivrin listened with her eyes closed. Mei Lin with a small board. Aurora with a button between her fingers. Taeyeon with papers. Lillian, just Lillian, standing nearby. Duval had sent a herald, Baron Vale. Count Hortense Duval offers you the peaceful surrender of the province of Turnhold. You will retain your lives and freedom. Your wives will be placed under the Count's custody. You have 1 hour to respond. Cassian looked down at the herald. Tell the Count that I'm ready to discuss the terms. In an hour, on the bridge, just the 2 of us, unarmed. The herald rode off. Cassian turned to his men. 6 pairs of eyes and 1 pair of ears were fixed on him. You can't go alone. Nari, that's exactly why I won't go alone. Mei Lin raised the tablet. I'm coming with you. Cassian looked at her. There was 1 more word on the tablet. It's time. Mei Lin. So, favor 20. No changes. But a small flame burned next to the thread. Quiet. Steady. She was ready. An hour later, Cassian and Mei Lin were standing on the bridge. Duval was approaching from the other side with his bodyguard. 4 people on the bridge, the river below, the army behind Duval. Nothing behind Cassian. Duval stopped 3 paces away. He looked down at Cassian, then at Mei Lin, silent. An interesting choice of companion, Baron. Cassian didn't respond to the dig. Your terms, Count. Duval smiled. It's simple. The province goes to me. The princesses go to me. You leave. Alive. That's generous. Cassian nodded. And if I refuse? Duval spread his hands. 400 men, Baron. You have 40 village men with pitchforks. I don't want bloodshed, but I'll shed it if I have to. Cassian paused. Then he turned to Mei Lin. She stood motionless. Her fan covered the lower half of her face. The eyes above the fan were calm and dark. Cassian said quietly, "Only if you want to." Mei Lin lowered her fan. She opened her mouth and spoke. Her first word in 4 years. Quiet. Clear. Every sound as sharp as a blade. Count Hortense Duval. You hired 7 mercenaries to kidnap Neyri Khan. You paid 200 gold pieces. You bribed Commissioner Roland Merck. You bribed Mayor Gren of Lower Kell. You sent 3 spies to the castle with orders to poison the princess. You paid Bishop Walter Brand 400 gold pieces to expedite the Inquisitor's visit. Her voice was steady, without a tremor, without emotion. Each sentence fell on Duval like a stone. He couldn't interrupt her, not because she wouldn't let him, but because her voice carried weight, physical, tangible. The voice of Sogyeon, SS class, absolute truth. Every word that came out of her throat was the truth, and everyone who heard it knew it. Didn't believe it, knew it. At the level of the spine, at the level of the bones. Duval turned pale. His bodyguard took a step back. Mei Lin continued. You applied for 4 princesses, not 2, 4. Neyri Han, Lillian Rose, Ivrain Allister, and Aurora Kincaid. You planned to use their gifts to expand your minds, through forced labor. You knew their gifts weren't broken. You knew this because a man from an organization that calls itself Scrigil told you so. Duval recoiled. His face turned ashen, his mouth opened, then closed. He wanted to shout that it was a lie, but he couldn't. because everyone who had heard Mei Lin's voice knew she couldn't lie. Physically, at the cellular level, if she says it, it's true. Mei Lin fell silent. She lowered her eyes. She raised her fan. Cassian could see that she was trembling, slightly, imperceptibly to the others. But he saw it. 4 years of silence. And her first words were a guilty verdict. Cassian stepped forward, toward Duval. Duval stepped back. The bodyguard placed his hand on his sword. Cassian didn't stop. "Count. You have 400 men. I have 40. But I have a woman who can speak only the truth, and she has just told your own army your truth." He turned to the 400 soldiers standing behind the bridge. They had heard. Everyone. Sogyun's voice carried all the way to the back ranks, because Lillian was standing on the castle wall, 400 meters away. And her amplifier gift worked even at that distance, amplifying Mei Lin's voice. So every soldier, every mercenary, every stable hand in Duval's army heard every word, and knew it was the truth. Duval stood on the bridge and watched as his army looked at him, not with loyalty, with doubt. He turned to Cassian. His voice was hoarse. "What do you want?" Cassian said quietly. "Leave. Today. And don't ever come back." Duval stood there for 10 seconds. 20. Then he turned and walked toward his horse. His bodyguard followed him. The army parted before him, in silence. An hour later, 400 men had marched off to the west. Cassian stood on the bridge and watched them go. Mei Lin stood beside him. Her fan shielded her face. Her hands were trembling. Cassian turned to her. "Mei Lin." She looked up and spoke her second word in 4 years. His name, Cassian. Quietly, like an exhalation, like the first breath of air after 4 years underwater. Mei Lin. So, favor 20, plus 30, 50. Hidden card revealed. Mei Lin's mother is alive and is at Turnhold Castle under the name Su Yan. Gift, Voice of Sojion. Complete reclassification, SS, 30% unlocked. Reward for Cassian, +1 allied community, Sojion. Duval's army of 400 men approached Turnhold, and Cassian went out to negotiate with Mei Lin. Mei Lin spoke for the first time in 4 years, and her gift of absolute truth exposed all of Duval's crimes before his own army, forcing him to retreat. Mei Lin's favor reached 50, and a hidden card was revealed about her mother, Su Yan, hiding in the castle. On the 34th day, Bishop Walter Bran arrived in Turnhold. 30 knights, white cloaks, golden seals. He was not like Lorenz, old, gaunt, a face as carved from bone. His eyes were cold and empty. He didn't smile. He didn't joke. He didn't bow. He rode through the gates like a master. Cassian met him in the courtyard, alone. The princesses were inside, all 7 of them. The bishop dismounted. He looked down at Cassian. "Baron Vale, I am here by order of the Chancellery of the Order of the Bright Flame. Signs of a non-canonical awakening of the gifts have been detected within your province. You are accused of heresy. You have the right to a trial of the gift. Refusal to stand trial constitutes an guilt." Cassian nodded. "I demand a trial of the gift, a public one, with witnesses, in the town square." Walter narrowed his eyes. "Witnesses? What witnesses?" "The residents of Turnhold, all 312 of them." Walter was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. He didn't care either way. 300 peasants couldn't influence the Inquisitor's decision, or so he thought. The square in front of the castle was small, trodden earth, a well in the center. 312 people stood in a semicircle. Peasants, blacksmiths, hunters, merchants, children, old people. All 4 villages. Taiyan had organized it. Over 3 days, she'd gone from house to house. She explained. She asked. She didn't order. She asked. For the first time in 12 years, the Baron asked rather than demanded. They came, all of them. Walter stood on a wooden platform, 30 knights behind him. Cassian stood opposite him, 7 princesses behind him. The trial began. Walter spoke first. He listed the charges: non-canonical awakening of the gifts, lack of the Order's blessing, use of magic without a license, suspicion of demonic influence. Cassian listened. He didn't interrupt. He waited. When Walter finished, Cassian spoke. "Your Excellency, I am not a mage. I have no gift. I did not perform any rituals. I did not summon demons. I simply asked a few people questions that no one had ever asked them before. If that is heresy, then I am guilty." Walter raised his hand. "Enough. I will ask the bearers." He turned to the 7 princesses. "Let each one step forward and demonstrate her gift. If the gift has been awakened without a blessing, I have the right," Cassian interrupted. "According to Section 7 of the Charter of the Court of the Gift, the accused has the right to a defense witness, one who may speak on his behalf." Walter frowned. "That right hasn't been exercised in 100 years, but it hasn't been repealed." Walter nodded through clenched teeth. Cassian turned to Mei Lin. She stepped forward. No tablet, no fan, hands at her sides, eyes fixed straight ahead. She stood before 312 witnesses, 30 knights, and 1 bishop, and she began to speak. Her voice was soft, but everyone heard it, every single one, down to the very last child in the very last row, because Lillian stood behind her and amplified her voice. "My name is Mei Lin So. I am Princess Sogyeon. My gift is called the Voice of Sogyeon. I can speak only the truth. A lie simply cannot pass through my throat. Every word you hear is the truth. Check it." Walter narrowed his eyes. He asked. He reached out his hand toward her. His hand glowed. The Order's lie detector. Standard procedure. Mei Lin repeated, "I can only speak the truth." The detector didn't flicker. It didn't light up. It didn't indicate a lie, because there was no lie. Walter withdrew his hand. For the first time, something other than stone appeared on his face. Mei Lin continued, "Not a single gift in this castle was awakened by a ritual. Not a single one was summoned by a demon. Not a single one was stolen. Every gift awakened on its own. Because, for the first time in her life, its bearer found herself next to a person who saw her, not her gift, her." Walter was silent. Mei Lin turned to him. "Ask me anything. I'll answer, truthfully, because I don't know how to do otherwise." Walter stood motionless. Then he asked, quietly, through clenched teeth. "Bishop Walter Bran received 400 gold pieces from Count Ortons Duval for expediting the Inquisitor's visit." "That's true." Mei Lin looked at him. "Yes." Silence. 312 people, 30 knights, 1 bishop. The silence was so thick you could hear the River Kell flowing behind the hill. Walter turned pale. The knights behind him exchanged glances. Lorenz stood among them. Cassian saw his face. Lorenz wasn't surprised. He knew. He knew about the bribe. And now everyone knew. Walter opened his mouth, closed it. Then he did what all people do when their facade crumbles. He screamed. "Seize them! Heresy! Demons! Seize them!" The knights did not move. Not a single one. They stood and looked at their bishop, the man to whom they had sworn allegiance, the man who had taken a bribe from a secular lord to burn 7 women. Lorenz stepped forward. "Your Excellency, according to paragraph 14 of the Order's charter, a knight has the right to refuse to carry out an order if it is given by a person convicted of bribery." Walter turned to Lorenz. His face was contorted. "You." Lorenz stood upright. His eyes were calm, kind, warm, and absolutely unyielding. Cassian looked at him and thought, a man with the face of a friend. Aurora had said he would kill Cassian, but he didn't kill him. He saved him. Perhaps Aurora had not foreseen literal death, but rather the death of the paper veil, the death of the Baron whom no one took seriously. Today, the paper veil died. In its place stood a man. Walter left an hour later, without his knights, alone, on a single horse. 30 knights remained. Lorenz approached Cassian. They stood side by side, watching the dust settle behind the departing bishop. "I'll report this to the Central Chancellery. Walter will be removed from office." Cassian nodded. "Thank you." Lorenz looked at him. "You knew she could only tell the truth." "Yes." "And you knew about the bribe." "Yes." "And you were waiting for this moment." Cassian was silent. "I wasn't waiting. I was hoping. Those are two different things." Lorenz looked at him for a long time. Then he turned to the knights, then back to Cassian. "My knights, 30 men. They'll stay until orders come from the capital. If you need help, Baron." Cassian looked at the 30 knights in white cloaks. "I do. You know how to haul stones." Lorenz laughed for the first time, loudly, openly, genuinely. "There are no broken people in this house." Cassian said this quietly, looking out at the square where 312 people were staring at him, one another. Not with fear, not with contempt, with something new, with hope. There are only those who no one bothered to ask. On the 37th day, Cassian Vale rode into the capital. He was not alone. Neri Khan and Meilin So rode behind him. Neri wore no gloves. Her hands were bare. Her back was straight. A sword hung at her belt. Meilin carried no fan, no tablet. Her gaze was steady. Her voice was firm. Behind them rode 10 knights of the Order in white cloaks, led by Lorenz. Behind the knights came a cart. On the cart were sacks. In the sacks were 3,000 gold pieces. Steel, silver, debts. Everything counted by Taeyeon down to the last coin. The capital's gates were open. Guards watched. Townspeople turned to look. Whispers spread through the streets. The paper veil, alive, with gold, with knights, with 2 women whom everyone considered broken. The throne room was full. Courtiers, lords, ladies, advisors, everyone who had bet on his downfall, everyone who had laughed when the herald read the sentence 37 days ago. Cassian entered. The floor was marble. The ceiling was high. The throne stood at the end of the hall. On the throne sat the king, not young, corpulent. His eyes were intelligent and lazy, a man accustomed to solving problems with other people's hands. Cassian reached the middle of the hall. He stopped. He bowed. One of the servants rolled a cart up to the foot of the throne. He opened the sacks. Gold glinted. Silver glinted. The hall fell into a murmur. Cassian stood up straight. "Your Majesty, the mandatory tax for the province of Turnhold in the amount of 3,000 gold pieces, in full, on time." The king looked at the gold, then at Cassian, then at the 2 women behind him, one of whom could crush the throne with her bare hands. The other could make the entire hall hear the truth that no one wanted to know. The hall was silent. Cassian continued, "I would like to discuss raising the tax rate for the province of Turnhold upward, because, Your Majesty, we can now afford it." Silence. Absolute. Marble-like. Heavy. The king opened his mouth, and at that moment, the doors to the throne room swung open. Everyone turned around. A woman stood in the doorway, not young, thin, wearing a mask. A simple white mask with no slits for the mouth. Only her eyes, brown, sharp, familiar. She entered, alone, without guards, without weapons. The hall parted before her like water before a rock. She stopped in the middle of the hall, between Cassian and the throne, and she spoke a single sentence, in a voice everyone recognized but couldn't place. "Skrigil sends her regards to Baron Vale." Meilin, standing behind Cassian, saw this woman. She saw her eyes, brown, piercing, familiar, and she spoke aloud, quietly, but everyone in the throne room heard her. "Mom! Soo-yeon, the old cook from Turnhold Castle." Mei-lin. She stood in the middle of the throne room wearing Skrigel's mask. Cassian looked at her. The system was silent. No threads were displayed. This woman was beyond what the system could read. Soo-yeon turned toward Mei-lin. Her eyes behind the mask flashed. She removed the mask, slowly. Her face, wrinkles, weariness, and that same sharpness in her eyes that Mei-lin had had when she exposed Duval on the bridge. Soo-yeon spoke, not to the entire hall, to her daughter. "You spoke." Mei-lin stood there, trembling. "Yes." Soo-yeon smiled, "so it wasn't for nothing." Then she turned to Cassian. "Baron Vale, I didn't come here as a mother. I came as a member of the tablet, number 4. Cassian was silent. He waited. "The tablet knows about you. It knows about your wives. It knows what you're doing. 15 years ago, we sealed the gifts of these 7 girls. Each of them was a key. A key to what, exactly, I won't tell you. Not yet. But I will tell you this. I joined the tablet to protect my daughter. Each of the 7 members of the tablet joined to protect one of the 7 girls. We sealed their gifts, not to destroy them, but to hide them from what is coming from the east. The gray tide." Cassian looked at her. "The tide is connected to them." Soo-yeon nodded. "The tide isn't a natural phenomenon. It's a weapon. It's searching for the 7 gifts, 7 specific gifts. If it finds them all in one place—" She didn't finish, but Cassian understood. "You scattered them across different kingdoms. You broke their gifts so the tide couldn't find them, and you hoped that no one would ever bring them together." Soo-yeon looked at him. "Yes, and then you came, and you brought them together." The throne room was silent. The king on the throne listened with the expression of a man who realizes he has just lost control of the situation. Cassian stood motionless. 7 princesses, 7 sealed gifts, 7 keys to whatever the gray tide is seeking. And he gathered them all in one place. Not by accident. He was summoned. Lillian summoned him. Her amplifier gift reached out to a dying man in another world and dragged him here. Without knowing why, without knowing where it would lead. Simply because a 15-year-old girl cried into her pillow at night and wished for a man to come who would see them all. Soo-yeon continued. "The tablet is not your enemy, Baron. The tablet is us. 7 mothers, 7 fathers, 7 people who sacrificed everything to hide their children. But you did what we never. You gave them back what we had taken away. And now the tide is coming. And only they can stop it. All 7 of them. Together." Cassian looked at Mei-lin. She stood there staring at her mother. Tears streamed down her face. But she wasn't crying. She stood upright, and the tears flowed of their own accord. Then he looked at Ne-ri. She was clenching her fists. Bare hands, no gloves. The stone floor beneath her feet was beginning to crack. Then he turned to Soo-yeon. "For 15 years you've been ruining your children's lives to save them." Soo-yeon nodded. "And you've come here to say that now their lives must be ruined all over again. For the sake of peace. For the sake of the continent." Soo-yeon remained silent. Cassian took a step forward. "No." Soo-yeon blinked. Cassian repeated. "No. I won't give them up. Not for the tide's sake. Not for the tablets. Not for the continent. I won't let them be used as tools again. As keys. As assets. They're people. Not gifts. People. And if the tide wants them, it'll have to get past me. And then past them. But not because someone ordered it, but because they'll decide for themselves." Soo-yeon looked at him for a long time. Then her expression changed. Something flickered in her eyes, something old and heavy, something like hope. "You'll protect them." "I won't protect them." He looked at Ne-ri and Mei-lin. "They'll protect themselves. I'll just be there." Su-yun stood motionless. Then she turned to Mei-lin. She walked over to her. She held out her hand. Mei-lin didn't move. 10 seconds. 20. Then she took her mother's hand and squeezed it. She didn't say a word. Words weren't necessary. Cassian turned to the king. He sat on the throne with the expression of a man who had just learned that his chessboard was actually a minefield. Your Majesty, the tax has been paid. The province of Turnhold remains mine. If you have any objections, Mei-lin, So is ready to discuss them openly, in front of the entire court. The king looked at Mei-lin, at the woman who spoke only the truth, then at the gold at the foot of the throne, then at Cassian. I have no objections, Baron Vale. Cassian bowed. He turned around and walked toward the doors. Neyri followed him. Mei-lin followed him. Mei-lin was leading her mother by the hand. Lorenz and 10 knights brought up the rear. The court was silent. The herald, the very same one who, 37 days earlier, had read out the sentence with a smile, stood by the wall and watched the procession with the expression of a man who had just lost a bet at odds of 1 to 40. They rode back for 2 days. Su-yun rode with them, in silence, beside her daughter. Mei-lin was silent too, but now it was a different kind of silence. Not the silence of fear, the silence of choice. She could have spoken. She knew it. Everyone knew it. But right now she didn't need words. She needed her mother's hand in hers. As they approached Turnhold, Cassian saw a light. Not torches, not bonfires. The smelter. It operated at night. An orange glow rose above the northern hill and lit up the sky. Celeste wasn't asleep. She was working, as always. 5 people stood at the castle gates. Yvraine, Celeste, Aurora, Taeyeon, Lillian. Without the cloaks of their former kingdoms, for the first time, just 5 women at the gate, waiting. Cassian dismounted. Neyri approached him. She removed her glove. She held out her hand. He took it. Bare palm to bare palm. Nothing broke. Mei-lin led her mother to the gates. Yvraine turned her head toward them. She smiled. Not at the sky, at them. Aurora stood nearby, her eyes clear. She whispered, "One line, my dear, just one." Taeyeon handed Cassian a mug, tea, bitter and strong, just like her. Celeste stood off to the side, black with soot, a pipe between her teeth. She nodded, once, briefly, without words, but Cassian saw something in her eyes that he hadn't seen before. Acknowledgement. Lillian was the first to hug him, as always. Her hands were small and warm. "Cassie, you're back." "He's back." Cassian stood at the gates of Turnhold and looked at the 7 women, each of whom, just 37 days ago, had considered herself broken, unwanted, cast aside. A banner rose above the castle, a new one, sewn by Lillian in 3 nights, 7 stars surrounding the 8th. The 7 gifts. 1 person without a gift. 1 team. The system flashed one last time behind this arch. The tax arch is complete. The tax has been paid. Casualties, 0. All 7 bearers are safe. Overall gift unlock, 15% average. Team synergy, 8%. Favor, 32, average. Threats neutralized. Merc, Duval, Walter. New threats. The Tablet. Grey Tide. Cassian Vale's status. No gift. No changes. Thread empty. Recommendation. Proceed. Cassian closed his eyes. He breathed in the air of Turnhold, bitter from the smelting furnace smoke, damp from the river, warm from the 7 people standing nearby. He thought, now it seems I have a team. And it seems I'm in love with all 7 of them in different ways. And it seems there's something ahead that will truly terrify me. But that's tomorrow. Today we're home. The next morning, Aurora woke up with a scream. Cassian was the first to rush in. She was sitting on the bed, her eyes wide open, clear, absolutely clear. Not a single unnecessary future. A single line, pure, sharp, and terrifying. Sweetheart, the 7 are coming. Not after us, after you.